Good morning, everyone. It's August 17th, 2023. I'm going to call the governing board meeting of the South Florida Water Management District to order. Good morning, Mr. Bergeron. First on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask Mr. Martinez if he would lead us in the pledge. No, thank you, Charlie. I appreciate you doing that. We're going to start today's meeting on a somewhat solemn note. As many of you know, former governing board member and board chairman Joe Collins passed away, and we're really all sad by that. Joe was appointed to the governing board in 2009. He served a total of 4 years from 2009 to 13, including 2 years as being chairman from 11 to 13. Joe had a really deep love for Florida's natural resources. In addition to being a staunch defender of our taxpayer dollars, he believed in the importance of providing the public with access to district lands and supported the expansion and enhancement of recreational opportunities on land purchased with public dollars. He's going to be remembered for the path that he helped to pave to improve Florida's water and to protect our natural resources. In addition to his love for Florida's environment, Joe was also a distinguished alumnus of the University of Florida and a proud Gators fan. We're honored to have known Joe. He was very helpful to me when I took over chairmanship. I enjoyed working with him and enjoyed calling him a friend. So we could have just a moment of silence for Mr. Collins. Thanks. And good morning again. It's good to see everyone here. Vice Chair Wagner is not going to be able to join us today. Mr. Steinle is going to be participating by Zoom. Jay, are you on?
I am, Mr. Chair. Good
Great.
morning.
Good morning. I'm going to ask board members that you make sure your microphone is on and that you please speak into the mic so online attendees can hear you. And if you turn your head while you're speaking, drag the mic with you so you can make sure that your comments are captured. Please get as close to the microphone as possible. Also, members of the public on Zoom who wish to address the board may use the raise your hand feature. If members of the public are having any trouble and need to help, please go to our website, sfwmd.gov, and click on the Ask Us button, and we'll help you out. If you're using a phone and you'd like to comment, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute or unmute. And as a courtesy to others who wish to speak, members of the public are asked to comment only once on each topic. We'll take public comment first from those who are here in person and submitted a comment card, followed by those with raised hands on Zoom. And now let's go to employee recognitions. Mr. Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, I got a few for you today. First of all, I'd like to recognize our August 2023 Employee of the Month, which is Bob Schaefer. He's our section leader of our real estate acquisition in our real estate bureau. Bob. So, Mr. Chair, I thought I knew real estate because I bought 3 houses in my life, and then I came to the South Florida Water Management District and really learned what real estate acquisition was all about with the incredible things that we have to do with the tracts of lands. And under Bob's leadership, we've done some great things as a board, like the Cantor acquisition, to prevent oil and gas drilling in the Everglades, like the last acquisition for the C-23 South Reservoir, the acquisition necessary for the C-25 Reservoir. But those are not why Bob's being recognized, although maybe he should have. But Bob is being recognized for the Green Heart of the Everglades acquisition. Complex acquisition, 4 different landowners, very unique setting, oil and gas rights, which are often not available in that area. The leases on the land, encumbrances on the land. It was a very complex acquisition that he negotiated over a year to its conclusion, which we saw the vote, and thank you for that, in Naples a couple months ago. Now we own the land. We've worked out the issues with the recreational activities so we can have sustainable access to those conservation lands. It is a crown jewel kind of acquisition that Bob pulled off here because you have Big Cypress Preserve, you got Fakahatchee Union's Preserve State Park, you've got Everglades National Park, and this was that hole in the donut which connected incredible panther habitat for conservation into the future, into eternity, essentially. And so he pulled it off, he got it done, we own the land, it's in conservation, and now we get to enjoy it. Thank you, Bob. This is why you are the August Employee of the Month.
Nice big smiles. In 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Looking good. Thank you.
All right. Our August 2023 Team of the Month is our Drone Unmanned Aircraft System Lead Team. That consists of Andrew Aloko, James Doak, Richard Fimble, Scott Hennessy, James Lang, Gabe Margasak, Brian McEachern, Michael O'Brien, Madeline Rinka, Kurt Sorry, and Greg Tulin. So we launched our drone program about 3 years ago. And launching a drone program is not an easy endeavor because there are a lot of rules around drone use in Florida. There's state rules and there's federal rules. There's training, there's certification, there's all kinds of things that need to happen. And it's a team like this that brought it together for us to bring drone technology to the South Florida Water Management District. So they have created the plan. We're executing the plan, and it is bringing more effectiveness, more efficiency, and quite frankly, more safety to the South Florida Water Management District with this program. We use drones for inspections of infrastructure, lands, and towers, observing and monitoring prescribed burns, helping with surveying and mapping, helping inspect active wildlife nests, and assisting vegetation management in our 1 million acres of land rather than driving through them, right, with the drone technology. We even used them after Hurricane Ian with inspections, post-storm inspections in Lee County and Osceola County to look for the needs where we could deploy our resources quickly and effectively. We have this year flown over 500 missions this fiscal year at the South Florida Water Management District. That's a lot of data collected safely, and it's more than we've ever had before, right? It is a program that makes us more effective and more efficient, and it takes a team like this with the excellence they bring to make this happen. And quite frankly, with this team, the sky's the limit. All right. Team of the month. All right, Mr. Chair, it's time for some service awards. We have a 25-year service award for Michael Chili. He's the assistant superintendent of our Fort Lauderdale Field Station. Michael came to us in 1998 and started at our Homestead Field Station, basically as in fleet maintenance, where he worked on over 40 different pieces of equipment, making sure that they are operational and safe for us to execute our mission with. And during that time, he also got into pump station engine refurbishment, repair, and overhaul, which is an incredible need that we have. And at some point, he transitioned from that duty to a pump station operator himself, right? It's great to have a pump station operator that can actually rebuild a pump station engine at the same time. So he did that for us for a bit. You'll find that he's done a lot for us, okay? It's been 25 years. He was then promoted to the crew chief for the fleet. That's where not only is he helping rebuild the engines and make sure the fleet is operational, but he's doing all the logistics. This is where he starts transitioning to that management role, where he's making sure we have the parts, we have everything we need to make sure our fleet continues to operate. And then he was promoted into the planner scheduler for structure maintenance and electrical crew. Again, structure maintenance, critically important to us, electrical is, but that's the parts, that's the scheduling, that's to make sure people are where they need to be. And then during that time, he joined our SAP master data team. And if you're in a field station, you can master SAP data, you are golden, right? Because that is a cornerstone of our field stations. And then he became the storekeeper, which is a not very enchanting name for a very important position in our field stations because they're responsible for everything, making sure we have everything, including fuel, deliveries, all that kind of stuff is there for our field station to continue to tick and move forward. And then he was promoted to supervisor for structure maintenance and electrical. Incredibly important position. Employees under him that he manages to make sure they are where they need to be, making sure our structures work. Gate overhauls, generator refurbishment and replacement, really good stuff that really helps us out. And of course, you may have seen him at our events, which we're very good at, and it's because of folks like Michael. But last June, he was promoted, very deservedly, to the assistant superintendent of our Fort Lauderdale Field Station. Changed locations, great field station. I'm sure he misses Homestead, but he is just well-deserved and 25 years of great service. Michael, really appreciate your service to the district.
Okay, next three smiles in 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Looking good. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. In 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Looking good. Thank you very much.
All right. We have a 30-year service award, Mr. Chair. This is for Larry Latour. He's electronics technician and SCADA instrumentation supervisor for the South Florida Water Management District. Now, I just want to mention that before Larry came to the South Florida Water Management District 30 years ago, he worked on equipment for air traffic control in the Air Force. And then he worked as a Marine tech for sea navigation for that. But then he decided to get more grounded here at the South Florida Water Management District. Wait for applause, you know. Okay. And joined us here in 1993. And so for the first 6 years, Larry was responsible for basically deploying our remote control units across our north spur of the district, including STA 5-6, where he installed 80 of the 125. And these are those telecommunications equipment that are absolutely necessary for us to get our job done 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And then he worked on the S5AE structure, where he was key for design, fabrication, and testing. And I'll tell you what, Larry knows flood control. I mean, he's been doing this for 30 years. He knows the importance of this equipment and getting it right, having it reliable, and make sure that our control center and all of us and the public knows what's going on in our water management system. In 2006, he was promoted to the supervisor of this unit he's supervising today, where he's responsible for 500 remote terminal unit locations in the district. An incredible amount to make sure it works, right? Including project manager for our Motorola contracts as well. That's 132 units across of our STAs. He's a phenomenal supervisor. He knows this business. He mentors, he trains, he's an innovator. You can't do this for 30 years and not innovate, that kind of technology. And he's been doing that for us the whole time. He's also an avid swimmer, racquetball player, tennis player. He has 3 kids, 2 grandkids, and so he's a busy guy. Thank you so much, Larry, for your 30 years of service. This is great.
Okay, nice big smiles. In 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Looking good?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you very much for that, Drew. It's always so impressive to see our employees, incredible work they do. We're going to go to agenda item number 4, and that's revisions. Molly, are there any changes to the agenda?
There were none, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. And we'll go to now to 5, which are abstentions by board members, if there are any. We'll start with Mr. Butler.
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Martinez.
None.
Colonel Roman.
None.
I have none.
None.
Ms. Meads, thank you. Mr. Steinle.
None.
Thank you. Mr. Bergeron.
I have one. I'm abstaining from voting on consent agenda item 25. My company, Bergeron Land Development, Inc., submitted a sealed bid for the canal and levee grading services in West Palm Beach Field Station area. Therefore, I am not voting nor participating on this item.
Thank you. We'll go to the approval of the minutes. Does anyone have any changes to the minutes for the July 13th meeting? Hearing none, could I have a motion for that?
I'll move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call that question. Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Mr. Martinez.
Yes.
Colonel Roman.
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes. Ms. Meads.
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron.
Yes.
Mr. Steinle.
Yes.
Thanks. That passes unanimously. Mr. Bartlett, the Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a brief one for you today. So first of all, I'd like to thank Molly Brown, who is here serving as interim clerk and helping us run the meeting. Thank you, Molly. We're all used to seeing Rosie Bird sitting up there. She has decided to move on to other pastures. I will not say greener pastures because we know that this is the greenest pasture in South Florida. But everyone knows that she was like a mother to the district and to the board, and she will be absolutely missed. She assures us she's not going anywhere. She'll be here for us still. Anyway, thank you, Molly, for stepping in. What I want to cover first is you got a letter last week from Okeechobee County raising concerns about a stormwater treatment area that we're working on in partnership with Ecosystem Investment Partners in their county. And so I want to just give you a quick briefing on the status of that. As you know, our role in trying to improve water quality for Lake Okeechobee is that partnership role with Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services and Department of Environmental Protection, where we kind of carry the ball when it comes to science, data collection, and then regional projects to help supplement the source control efforts from the other two agencies. And when we looked across the landscape in northern Lake Okeechobee, there was a hot spot, if you will, that needed regional treatment. And Molly, thank you. You will notice in the north of Lake Okeechobee, there's that black line, that is the C-38 canal, which basically the Kissimmee River becomes. And associated with that canal is a basin. It's the S-154 basin. And if you look at the chart, that basin, which is also part of, 154C is part of that as well, has the highest concentrations of phosphorus. So we knew we needed regional treatment, but also proximal to the C-38, you could also, when the S-154 is not flowing, you can also treat the C-41A basin in the lower Kissimmee because of its location. So 2 years ago, thank you, Molly. 2 years ago, we solicited for a regional treatment system in that area. Basically put a solicitation out, said, does anybody can come in and help develop that regional system for us so we can meet our responsibilities. Thanks, Molly, you can move that slide off. And so we did get some responses, and about 2 years ago, you entered into a contract merely to develop that regional treatment system. And that's what you entered into a contract for, is to develop it, scope it, start design, seeing what could work in that area. And so that's where we are. And as you saw in the letter, concerns have been raised by neighbors, next to that system. That is something that has to be addressed. Not diminishing that at all. We have to address concerns of folks in the area. And so we did last Thursday. The district presented the need for the regional treatment, and Ecosystem Investment Partners presented where they were, which is very early in the process, right? They don't have all the answers. They're in early design. They're doing the geologic, all that kind of work right now to develop that project. So we presented to the Okeechobee Commission. Ecosystem Investment Partners committed to come back as they work with the community and present again to the Okeechobee Commission. Next week, they're hosting a session where the local neighbors can come in, get answers, talk through it, understand where they are. They can make design changes, right? It's not too late for that to address those concerns. So we're early in the process. I've certainly committed to the chairman that we'll continue to work through it, and Ecosystem Investment Partners is doing the same thing. We know, we just came off the heels of an incredible algae bloom on Lake Okeechobee. We all know the importance of improving water quality going into Lake Okeechobee. And so your staff here is committed to continue to work through whatever issues are necessary for us to execute our mission when it comes to improving our ecosystems. So that's where we are with that project, and we'll keep you posted. What I also want to talk about while I'm up here is our partnership with the Corps of Engineers. A lot of things happened or is happening right now with the Corps, and I wanted to let you know some of those things. First of all, they're starting to update the integrated delivery schedule. You remember this roadmap. This is the one-stop shop for everything South Florida ecosystem restoration. They've started that process working with our staff to update that, this guidebook, if you will. We would expect they're kicking off a public conversation tomorrow about all the different components and what they are, but we won't see an updated draft until September 6th at the working group, science coordination group, and then the final will be presented on November 15th to the task force. Some of the things you will expect to see is, you recall the governor last year charged us with achieving even more now. So we have looked at opportunities with the EAA Reservoir to pull the pump station to move it up in the schedule, to look at the Indian River Lagoon South Reservoir to move it up in the schedule, bring it up to our side to execute. And then, of course, this afternoon, or later on today, we're talking about the northern storage component that was also asked to look at. So those kind of things, you know, are changes you might be able to expect to see on this new integrated delivery schedule. The other thing that happened a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was, maybe 3, is Pete Perez, who is the Chief of Engineering and Construction for the Corps of Engineers. He's in headquarters. He is over all engineering and construction. He visited South Florida to engage with the district, engage with the local communities, learn about everything we're doing down here, from including SERP, including CNSF flood control, resiliency, all these types of efforts. So it was great to host him, and it's nice to see that investment and leadership on the specifics of Florida and what we're trying to achieve down here. A good conversation, and I'm looking forward to our long-term relationship with Mr. Perez. Next Tuesday, the Corps of Engineers is hosting a ribbon cutting, not a groundbreaking, a ribbon cutting for another project, the Biscayne Bay Coastal Wetlands L31 East Flowway. Here we are, SERP projects finishing. That's pretty exciting. And congratulations to the Corps for landing that project. Very important for Biscayne Bay. Now I'd like to recognize Colonel Todd Polk. This is Colonel Polk's last governing board meeting, serving for the last 4 years for the Corps of Engineers. He has been such a ray of sunshine, I guess, for the Corps of Engineers. I remember Colonel Polk's first 16 county coalition meeting, where he's usually, when you come into the room and your work for the agency, it's often, you know, you're often the smartest person on the subject matter. But Todd quickly learned that our stakeholders down here in South Florida are very smart when it comes to understanding our issues. And so Todd drank from the fire hose big time. And he's been just a wonderful person. When he walks in the room with his smile, he's got the best disposition for the job that he has. And he's been just great to work with. I think he's staying local, so hopefully we'll see him around. But Todd, I wanted to bring you up and recognize you, and if we could come down and get a picture with Colonel Polk for his awesome service. Thank you to the students. Thanks, Doc. Also, while Todd moves on into retirement, he is going to be replaced, and we have his replacement here in the audience, Major Corey Bell, who has already made the rounds and started introducing himself to folks, and he'll be a great addition to what we're trying to do down here in South Florida. Thank you, and welcome aboard. All right, Mr. Chair, that's what I have for you today.
Thanks, Drew. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Drew? Before you leave, I may have one. What's the latest on the C-43? Since everyone's asking me.
Oh, sure.
I'll ask you.
So we've got about 30 contractors out there working on it. We were out there, saw the structures under construction and so forth. The soil cement wall, I met with Phillips and Jordan yesterday. They've already got 2 pug mills out there, and they'll really ramp up the soil cement placement in September. What I want to do is host a gathering out there for folks in the community to come out and see the progress we're making out there. I know I was out there a couple of weeks back, and usually when I'm out there, I can stand on the center berm and say, that's the pump station, and point over to the pump station. But since there was a berm now in front of the pump station, I couldn't point at the pump station anymore. So it is progressing. So we'll just keep you posted on that one.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd just
Mr.
like
Bergeron?
to say something with Colonel Polk is,
Sure.
working with him for the last 3 years, 24/7. Doesn't matter if it's midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, with any and all issues. Really want to thank you for taking care of South Florida and 24/7 for all of us. Thank you.
You ready for that, Major?
And his real name is Baby Alligator.
Baby alligator. All right. Thanks, Mr. Bergeron. Next we'll go into a general public comment. Go ahead.
Yes, we have several public comment. We'll start with Jeremy McBrien, followed by Newton Cook and Gil Smart.
Good morning, Chair, Governing Board members. Jeremy McBrien with Ecosystem Investment Partners. Thanks, Drew, for introducing the topic. I'm the project manager for the Lower Kissimmee Basin Stormwater Treatment Area that Drew talked about. So, as he mentioned, yeah, we briefed Okeechobee County last week on the project, and just want to give you a little bit of update from my perspective today. So, yeah, we're wrapping up this exploratory phase where we're providing information to the district and the stakeholders to really understand the benefits of the project, how it integrates with the community, the other benefits that it provides as far as, consistency with drainage and flood control of the region, as well as some of the other public use and recreation benefits that we expect. So in close coordination with the district staff over the years, we've been working on getting a project conceptualized that we think will be really compatible to the region and provide those water quality benefits. The project is really focused on those that key basin, that basin S154 that has some of the highest concentrations and loads that are being discharged to Lake Okeechobee. And then in addition to that, we're located in a way that allows flows to be treated from the C38 canal, the channelized Kissimmee River. So I think the unique location is there, again, focusing on the Okeechobee County basin, but also providing that regional treatment when those flows aren't available from that basin. So we think it has high potential. We like the project. Again, we have some comments from the public that we need to follow up on. And as Drew mentioned, we have a workshop planned. It's August 29th. It's a Tuesday. We have 2 sessions, 2 to 4 p.m. that afternoon, and then also 5 to 7 p.m. that evening. We'll have a variety of the team members there, the design engineers, the contractors that we have on board, several folks from my team at Ecosystem Investment Partners will be there to help answer questions and provide more information as needed to the public. So we look forward to that. We are hoping by the end of this year to really have the conceptual project firmed up and finalized. And then again, we will continue to engage with the public and provide additional community meetings and stakeholder outreach efforts. And we really think that there's going to be some robust opportunity for stakeholder engagement moving forward over the next couple of years, where if we proceed with this project and get this project designed and up and running. So we look forward to continuing to work with the district and DEP to implement this critical water quality project. So thanks you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. McBrien. We'll go next to Newton Cook, followed by Gil Smart and Mark Perry.
Good morning, Newton Cook, United Water Followers of Florida. I just want to thank the district for the folks that came out to a large event, not only 20, 25 airboats. Basically, it was on the Mississauga Reservation, and just a wonderful group of people. Betty Osceola and the group of Mississauga people were extremely helpful and generous. Camp owner had us all for lunch. If you've never been to a camp out in the middle of the swamp, it's an interesting experience. It even had Wi-Fi, which was so. That is the beautiful part of the Everglades. You will not see a cattail. Mr. Bergeron will tell you, you don't have to go far south, and you will actually see the Everglades as it was when it was a river of grass, when it was actually grass, and not what we've done to it, mostly into the north, which I'll speak to later. We had, the Big Cypress, all the big leadership was there. It was really something from Park, Department of Interior. We've had a bit of a problem with the Highway Patrol, Florida Highway Patrol writing tickets on people parking at our locations scattered throughout the WCAs for overnight parking for people who hunt and fish and camp. And I think we've addressed it. I hope we've addressed it, but I wanted to make it public that those places were put there for people to go park and go fishing and go out into the Everglades and come back the next morning, maybe 2 mornings later. And we don't need to be writing tickets for people recreating and parking legally. Florida Highway Patrol. Now to the subject. No one is more supportive of the Corps than I am. I think they'll tell you that over the years. I keep explaining to people the Corps doesn't put a shovel in the ground till some civilian orders them, a politician. They dig the ditch and they fill in the ditch according to orders. It's not what they just devised to do. So, but there's one thing we're doing right now that is devised, and that is we're killing Lake Okeechobee, and I keep talking about it. We are down to less than 2,000 acres of SAV on the lake, and the lake is as dirty as it's ever been in history, and it's getting dirtier every day because the water's too high, and the SAV cannot grow, and there's nothing in that lake that's cleaning it up. The 500 tons of phosphorus that comes into that lake every year is coming in year after year after year, and we're down to nothing to clean it. And where do you think it's going to go with the first storm? We're over 15 feet right now. One storm, and the water is going to have to go out of that lake. An 8-foot slosh happened. 8 foot on top of 16 feet is 24 feet hitting the south end of that lake on the levee. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. We'll go next to Gil Smart, followed by Mark Perry and Caitlin Newcamp.
Morning, Governor Board. My name's Gil Smart. I'm Policy Director for Friends of the Everglades, based in Stewart, founded in 1969 by Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. Like everyone else, we're watching the situation on Lake Okeechobee closely, concerned about the prospect of discharges and algal blooms in the northern estuaries. And we've noted recent news stories about how the district has been treating blooms. Martin County's John Mayle was quoted on WPTV saying the district, quote, deployed a contractor that's approved for treating cyanobacteria with a peroxide kind of chemical, and that microcystin levels had fallen in the areas treated. Okay, but the increased use of such treatments to douse blue-green algae blooms raises questions that haven't been publicly answered. What are the long-term ramifications for the ecosystem? Not all algae is bad. Is good algae being killed as well? Are these treatments the most cost-effective way to address algal blooms? The Blue-Green Algae Task Force met in this very room more than a year ago and raised similar questions that have not yet been publicly answered. So we'd like to ask the board, you folks, to request a report on the effectiveness, impacts, cost, and frequency of the technology being used to treat harmful algal blooms. Is the peroxide-like chemical all that's being used? We don't know, and we don't know that the public knows. So it would be good to lay it all out, because blue-green algae is a problem that's not going away anytime soon, which means that our attempts to solve it via new technological means or chemicals won't be going away either. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smart. We'll go next to Mark Perry, followed by Caitlin Newcamp.
Morning, Governing Board. Mark Perry, Florida Oceanographic. Just wanted to we've been monitoring the lake as well, and as you know, there have been some recent releases at the end of July and beginning of August from S308 in Port Mayaca into the C44 canal. Along with that, of course, came the microcystic blue-green algae, which is toxicity, ended up in Indiantown and Tyner Powers Park and boat ramps, and up to 800 parts per billion was recorded. The treatment happened, it dropped down to 5.6 parts per billion. Same questions exist as to, what are the effectiveness of these treatments. They're very effective, used for mitigation right there at a public place, and that's probably the best purpose for them. The science still needs to be done on those issues that were brought up by Gil Smart, but just wanted to bring that up, that those are coming through, and not to be used as a solution to the problem. We can't just depend on treatments. We have to go to the source of the problem, and that's upstream. That 598 metric tons that's coming into Lake Okeechobee is not meeting the TMDL of 105 metric tons, which we established that TMDL back in 2001. So that's like 20 some odd years ago. And the other BMAPs are also in the same situation. They're not going to achieve the TMDLs in these 20-year periods that they've been advocating for. Those BMAPs all fall under those three watersheds. Okeechobee and the other three watersheds, St. Lucie and Caloosahatchee, are concerning because they all fall under NEP, the Northern Everglades and Estuaries Protection Plan. So we need to kind of address that and have your report come back. Jen Reynolds did that last May. We need to have that report look at, and you're the agency that monitors those basins, 9 sub-basins, 64 basins with 331 monitoring stations. You know where the pollution is coming from. We need to stop that pollution at the source of the problem and address it there. Same in the St. Lucie Basin and Caloosahatchee. But thank you for your time. I know you're attentive to it. The last thing is that the water temperatures, as you know, around our sea surface temperatures around the state, and particularly in Southwest Florida, have risen tremendously. We're at record levels of 101 degrees Fahrenheit measured, just incredible. And I think it's important to note that, and I thought it was really well put by Kelly Cox of Florida Audubon in her statement recently that said that these record temperatures tell us that the climate change is here. And they measured at Taylor Slough 96.7 degrees, which is a record they've been measuring for 30 years. These record temperatures tell us it's here, and we need Everglades restoration now more than ever. And it was echoed by Dr. Jerry Lorenz, also of Audubon for South Florida, knowing that the Everglades restoration is working. The improvements to that have allowed more flows to go south into Florida Bay and hopefully help the seagrass beds from getting so impacted by it. Not to take that away from our coral reefs that up and down the coast here have been heavily impacted. I encourage you to even look at Port of Miami has that Coral City camera that's live streaming, and when it pans around you can see the elkhorn corals. Some of them are live, but a lot of them have been bleached because of the temperature rises. So we all got to do our part. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. We'll go next to Caitlin Newcamp and then switch to our virtual participants, Steve Kohler and Ryan Rossi.
Good morning, Governing Board members. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I'm Caitlin Newcamp, Everglades Policy Associate with Audubon, Florida. So like Drew mentioned earlier, and EIP as well, we're here to talk about the Kissimmee STA. We are glad to see progress being made on this basin STA, and we're here today speaking in support of developing this shallow storage project, which will help slow down and treat water in this watershed. More of these types of projects are needed in Lake Okeechobee to meet its phosphorus TMDL goal. Additionally, the location of this project is ideal as it is adjacent to a reliable water source and within a basin with one of the highest levels of phosphorus that currently discharge directly into the lake. Though this is still conceptual at this time, we support developing this public-private partnership to help mitigate some of the highest nutrient-laden discharges going into the lake. And we agree also with some of the other commenters that additional community outreach in these early stages is going to be needed to provide helpful information to inform the communities adjacent to the lake and other stakeholder groups about the value of this project to the community, to Everglades restoration, and to the health of Lake Okeechobee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Newcamp. We'll move next to our virtual participants. First, we'll hear from Steve Kohler, followed by Ryan Rossi. Mr. Kohler, would you please unmute your mic?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Good, thank you. Good morning. My name's Steve Kohler. I'm President and Chief Operating Officer for Thale Construction, a Tully Group company. We're South Florida's contractor on STA 1 West Expansion Number 2. I'm speaking this morning in an attempt to elevate our concerns and hopefully avoid costly litigation regarding unpaid owner-director changes that exceed $70 million. For perspective, the contract value at time of award was slightly less than $100 million. Since April of 2023, when Jennifer Reynolds was, her oversight changed, we've had no communication with executive South Florida leadership despite numerous attempts for meetings. We currently have a fundamental disagreement regarding substantial completion. We believe substantial completion has been achieved. The field staff continues to blur the contractual lines and not provide substantial completion. This appears to be a tactic to push off indefinitely the triggering of mediation for the $70 million in unpaid owner-directed change work. Regardless, it's a great, very frustrating point of contention that seems to be a never-ending and ever-changing target. We respectfully request that the board assign proper and appropriate staff knowledgeable of the issues to resolve these unpaid changes. In summary, among other things, the district is avoiding substantial completion and avoiding $70 million in unpaid owner-directed changes. I would like to add one other side note. There was a time back in April prior to Ms. Reynolds' reassignment where we did agree on a big picture of owner-directed changes. It was a large amount of money. And once the district realized that the acceptance of those owner-directed changes and payment would trigger the funding of additional, they pulled the agreement off the table. If the board desires, we can provide chronological support of the unpaid owner-directed work. And I appreciate the opportunity to share. I'm available to anyone as needed. And we do appreciate the work that South Florida, that the district does in the Everglades. We appreciate the opportunity to have been a part of this project. We look forward to many, many more successful projects in the future. We just felt like at this point, we needed to elevate our concerns above what currently we believe to be only handled by field staff.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Kohler. We'll move next to Ryan Rossi. Mr. Rossi, please unmute your mic.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you.
Thank you. This is Ryan Rossi with the South Florida Water Coalition. Thank you, as always, for the opportunity to comment. I just want to reiterate what I said at the meeting last month regarding water supply for South Florida. I've already mentioned previously that our population has increased more than any other state over the last several years. That was based on what the projections were from the National Association of Realtors. That said, some new data shows that we're already on track to match last year's increase of nearly 2% or potentially exceed it. That is yet to be determined, of course. The year's not over, but it seems completely within the realm of possibility we may get there. Without that slowing down, I think we simply need to be prepared for what's coming our way. How do these increases blend in with our current environmental conditions, specifically with water? I don't think there's anything more discouraging, and I know that all of you with the Water Management District know this or aware of it. Many people think that or assume that water is an unlimited resource. It's not unlimited. This should be even more of a concern given the weather we are experiencing. I've heard others talk about it just today. Record-breaking water temperatures is certainly going to continue to add, I think, to a sea level rise problem in addition to other unpredictable weather events. All of this impacts our water in terms of availability, but also quality. And I think that's what makes future management so critical to the area, whether we're talking about managing Lake O or when we're managing it. But also a lot of infrastructure concerns. Look at the latest studies by FAU regarding the effects of septic on our local waterways. This is a report that's been coming out the last several months. I think we need to seriously begin a commitment to transitioning communities from septic to sewer. We look at the impacts that are happening. I think it's very dangerous, and I think the public is watching. I think we all need to pay attention, and I think that we're certainly collectively expecting some solutions as we go forward. So I know the district is working hard on future planning. I think that's very appreciated. I just think that we need to continue to devote that extra attention to supply for our coast, our water quality, and how we're going to address this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rossi. Mr. Chairman, we have no additional raised hands.
Great, thank you, Molly, and thank you all very much for your comments. We're going to move now to a board comment, and I'll start on my left with Mr. Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To begin with, a few words on Mr. Collins. Very untimely. Caught everybody off guard. My condolences to Lisa, his 3 sons, and thanks to them for letting him serve the Water Management District as long as he did and as much time as he put into this. Chauncey and I were at the funeral, and Joe was recognized as being a Gator. First time I've ever sang "We Are the Boys of Old Florida" at a funeral. There were obviously some Seminoles next to me that didn't want to participate, but Joe understands. But no, he's a family man, Christian, and also Joe's service to his employer. Mr. Charlie spoke on Mr. Joe's behalf, and Joe will be missed. And I can tell you some things we'll be talking about later today that I know he'd love to be the part of the discussion on. But Todd, Todd's already pulled out, but again, Todd, thank you for your service. And Major Bell, Charlie, is also a Gator. So we'll be bringing a Gator on. Yep, University of Florida in the house. Drew, I appreciate your and Mr. McBrien's comments on Lower Kissimmee Basin STA. We've received now, I think, 2 letters from Okeechobee County and as the governing board, and I think there are some recognized concerns there that Drew and EIP are committed to addressing and working through, and I appreciate that. So thank you for looking into that. The ribbon cutting at Aljo Groves, 4 Corners, ribbon cutting, pump turn on. Another great project, this time on the Caloosahatchee. And another great, I forget how many acre feet of water storage we're talking, but it's another bite at that elephant, Ms. Reynolds. And so it's good to see another one of those projects that we authorized last May finally coming to fruition. I mean, that one's actually to completion, so that's a big deal. To be authorized, just 15 months ago? So, right? Yeah, it's 15 months ago when we were in the Keys. So yeah, no, that was good to see. Seemed like I had something else that I didn't write it down, so I forgot it. But with that, we'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Mr. Butler. Mr. Martinez.
Yes, real quickly, Mr. Chair. Thank you to Rosie Bird. Rosie, you will be sorely missed. I'm sure Molly will step in and do a great job, but you made our job so easy. Love you. We'll miss you and hope to see you around very soon. And also to Colonel Polk. Todd has also been wonderful. Everybody in this agency is so good at what they do. And even though Colonel Polk is not part of our agency, he's with the Corps, but he's like a stepson of our agency, and we love him dearly. So he will also be very missed. So to both of them, thank you for everything you all have done, and like I said, you make our jobs really, really easy.
Colonel Roman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few things this morning. First of all, I think it was really fitting that we recognize Joe Collins. He was one of the first individuals that I met when I was selected to serve on the governing board, and I was introduced to him and also to the Likes brothers at the same time. And our relationship continued in a positive way over this past 4.5 years. So I think that's really, really special to recognize him and his contributions. We have some big news in the Big Cypress Basin. Governor DeSantis appointed 3 new board members, and reappointed 2 board members. The new board members are Michelle McLeod, Michael Romano, and Patricia P.J. Smith. And Andy Hill and Dan Waters will be returning to the board. And the significance of this is really special. This is the first time in over 4.5 years that I will have a full basin board. So I want to thank the governor for those appointments and the appointments office for working those through. I'd also like to congratulate Chauncey, Scott, and Jay for their reappointments to the governing board by the governor. I know it's pending Senate confirmation, but I just wanted to congratulate you for those reappointments. A little update for the board on some of the activities. Jennifer Reynolds and I traveled to Howells Ranch to meet with several landowners in the West Feeder Canal Basin to discuss their concerns for the Western Everglades Restoration Project. It was a good dialogue, and I think that one of the important points that I came away from that meeting with was the fact that the landowners offered several ideas to improve the West Feeder Basin portion of the project. So I hope as we continue to go forward that we'll be receptive to listening and also be flexible in that particular portion of that project. I attended the environmental permitting summer school, and this was my 5th year attending. And this year, I found the seminars on resiliency of particular value. Dr. Westbrooks highlighted the fact that communities are dealing with problems now. And here's an example. We talk about converting septics to sewers, and we talk about financing those programs, getting grant money, all those types of things, and we seem to be focused on that. Well, you know, I talked to a couple of commissioners from various counties that are actually looking at similar approaches to raise seawalls for entire communities, to actually do major projects to prepare for sea level rise. So I think that there's a lot going on in regards to this that many communities are looking for solutions to address. And I think at some point there may be an opportunity for the district to look at integrating resiliency parameters based upon sound science into how we review environmental resource permitting applications. I say that because I'm not an expert on ERP permitting. But I know that we've got a lot of smart folks that might take a look at what can be done. And it's really different. It'll take a bold new way of thinking because resiliency plans for the future, right? As opposed to how we look at things today, right now, when we're reviewing these permits. So I just shared that with you, but that was something that jumped out at me during all of these seminars that I attended during summer permitting school on resiliency. There's a new effort going on between the Conservancy of Southwest Florida and the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation. I attended a stakeholder listening session with the consultant that was hired to develop a method to quantify environmental benefits. You know how many times in our discussions here at our meetings we talk about water quality and the benefits to the environment with our restoration, but when it comes to measures and a way to quantify those environmental benefits, well, we have very little to rely on. So the Conservancy and the Sanibel Captiva Foundation, Conservation Foundation, is going to develop a way to measure these environmental benefits. And this report is near term. It should be done in December. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they come up with because that'll be important to our restoration work. With my purple jacket on yesterday, I visited the Loxahatchee River District with Mark Elsner. It was a fantastic dialogue with Aubrey Arrington, and it's very, very interesting what they're doing with their reclaimed water in terms of using a treatment train through natural systems to make it even better than just cleaning the water. And it seems to me that there's certain patterns with how you make water better. And in the time that I've been on the governing board, they keep repeating themselves. So we know what to do. It's just a matter of getting it done. And in some cases where we have wastewater treatment plants that are in urban environments, they have very little room to expand, right? So we have to come up with innovative ways. But it was an excellent day, and I really, really appreciate them for sharing with me how they leverage green infrastructure in order to provide a reclaimed water product that's of a higher standard. And lastly, I'd like to thank Lieutenant Colonel Polk. I see he came back into the room, Ben. Lieutenant Colonel Polk has been engaged with us every step of the way. He's been at every ribbon cutting, every groundbreaking. He's been out on swamp buggies with me in the middle of the Big Cypress. I've seen quite a lot of Colonel Polk as he's served in his position. His willingness to engage at every level and his leadership has just been tremendous. And I hope, Colonel Polk, that you'll be successful as you move on to your next chapter in life. And I also hope that you'll tell your successor that as this new IDS is published, I'm going to be looking closely at the Picayune Strand Restoration Project to make sure those dates advance instead of slip. Okay, so it's always dicey when the new IDS comes out to see if those dates, which way they move. So I'll be having an eagle eye on that particular line item along with the other priorities that Drew mentioned early on. But thank you so much for your service and for your friendship and your engagement. Thank you.
Ms. Meads.
So as you get older, you learn to embrace change. A lot of times that's growth, and that's what growth looks like. So you can't dislike it or hate it or groan over it unless it's Colonel Polk leaving. I don't like it. I have to accept it, but I want you to know he is a great guy, great to work with. When he doesn't have to wear his uniform, he's got some really cool hats. And I just believe that we will see you around. I don't think you'll just disappear. You'll be missed. You can't be part of this organization and not become attached, which brings me to Rosie Byrd. We love Rosie. I want the best for the Colonel. I want the best for Rosie. We're going to miss you both. We care about you both. And then finally, I really have just a quick question for Drew. So we're working on the Lower East Coast Water Supply Plan right now. And as we go through that, I just have a question about that process. I know we've been trained on it, but I still need to ask you. So we look at growth in a district, new residents that move in, new houses that are built, correct? But we don't look at tourism. Is that also correct? It worries me when I look at this last piece, right? The lower part of South Florida. I mean, all of Florida is expanding in not only new residents, but also exploding with tourism. And so do we consider that? Because I see in areas where a one-bedroom trailer is turning into a 14-bedroom, 14-bathroom house. And so can you explain to me, I know the world's not perfect, but can you explain to me how we do that?
No. So I do, I know we project growth from a population standpoint, but let me trace down Mark Elsner and get you an answer on that.
Yeah, and normally I wouldn't just pop something like that on you, but I got a call this morning on the way in, and I thought, oh, yeah, because I couldn't answer it either.
Very good question.
Yeah. Thanks.
Mr. Bergeron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I want to say, Colonel Polk, it's been great working with you. We look forward to working with you in the future. I know you're not going anywhere. You love the Everglades, and like I said earlier, it's 24/7 for the last 3 years, and want to thank you dearly for your service. And Rosie, I had so much security with her sitting beside me, turning this button off about 1,000 times, taking care of me and all of us, actually. And I know that, Molly, you're stepping into some big shoes here, but look forward to working with you. As always, I want to thank our staff. It's amazing. And I want to thank Drew for recognizing at every meeting all of these people that dedicate their lives to South Florida, 16 counties, approaching 10 million people. What an undertaking. So the greatest staff that I've ever worked with. And also want to thank my fellow board members, as I do always. It's an honor to sit with you. I know there was briefly about parking on our boat ramp areas, something we need to look into with FWC. Those recreational areas were built for people to put their airboats and fishing and enjoy this, one of the natural wonders of the world. So I don't know why they'd be handing out tickets. So I'm sure you'll follow up with that, Drew. We're a little bit high in the conservation areas across the board, and I want to thank our staff and John for being on their toes to keep moving as much water south for the benefit of Florida Bay and Everglades National Park. We're not in serious trouble, but with one tropical storm, things can turn overnight. I want to make a little general statement as we move forward with Western Everglades Restoration Warp. And in general, the Big Cypress Preserve is kind of a unique environment. And it's important that everybody understands that the Big Cypress Preserve is 50% uplands and 50% wetlands. Extremely diversified habitat. It's not like the river grass. It's not ridge and sloughs for hundreds of miles from Boggy Creek all the way to Florida Bay. It's an isolated, pocketed system. The cleanest water in the Everglades is the Big Cypress Preserve. We all understand that we house the only sustainable population of the panther in the Big Cypress itself, with a population of nearly 2,000 bears running around. So something's pretty good about the Big Cypress and we need to keep our eyes on that. And as we go forward with Everglades restoration, or Western Everglades warp, we need to be very cautious about the wildlife corridor. This area is the connectivity to the Caloosahatchee for the panther, for the bears, for the icon animals that have huge home ranges. So as we go forward, the sensitivity of that area, we have to really pay attention to. That area is primary panther habitat, primary breeding ground, and this is documented by U.S. Fish and Wildlife and Florida Fish and Wildlife. It is the wildlife corridor, and as we go forward, we want to make sure that the number one stakeholder is the environment. That is the number one stakeholder as we go forward and try to improve that geographical area. Moving water south, I want to compliment our staff and Colonel Reynolds for working on the Tamiami Trail, understanding that water flowed south across 80 miles of the Tamiami Trail. And as we go forward with our design to add culverts in the L28 and culverts under the Tamiami Trail west of the L28 and culverts under Loop Road, so water flows south by gravity in all the sloughs across to Florida Bay. Move water south. And I have to apologize that I bring this up a lot, but we're on the threshold of modified water delivery. We've hit stage 1 at 8.5 in the L29. We're moving substantial amount of water south. And as we complete the Tamiami Trail in the next year and a half or so, that elevation will reach 9.7, and we will connect the Central Everglades to the Southern Everglades to Florida Bay, the Big Cypress Preserve, all water moving south without cumulative backups in the conservation areas and the Big Cypress, which is 1.5 million acres of land that's impacted from cumulative backups. Water will equalize with shared adversity globally across the Central Everglades, the Southern Everglades, Big Cypress, Fakahatchee, Picayune, and the Panther Refuge. Millions of acres are going to benefit. So I want to continue to maybe a little more of an update to all our board members, Colonel, as we get into our meeting here and how you're progressing to get this water moving south. And thank you, and I apologize for being so long-winded.
You weren't. Mr. Steinle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Sorry I can't be there with everybody in person. I do want to acknowledge the comments we got back from Okeechobee County on the Lower Kissimmee project. And as I understand it, Ben and Libby Pigman, you both deserve some thank you for taking an active role in this, as well as staff. But I did want to comment that this project, I believe, is very important, a very important opportunity to treat Kissimmee River and basin water. And as Drew said, in one of the highest highest areas of concentrated nutrients. So I'm confident that, staff, I'm confident that our partners in private industry will actively engage. I think this is a matter of just sharing more information. And if it's more than that, certainly making adjustments to address stakeholder concerns. But I just wanted to comment that very important to move forward. And this is a design phase, the initial phase of the water quality project. We need these projects north of Lake Okeechobee. The second thing, we've all heard about the impact on marine ecology of this crazy heat that we are getting, long duration, the impact on Florida reefs, which sounds terrible. I want to focus attention also on the impact to seagrass in Florida Bay, in Biscayne Bay, in other areas that have sort of been affected by this long duration of extreme heat. And we'll recall too, back around 2016, we had a massive seagrass die-off. Clearly, we want to avoid that. Unfortunately, back then, the issue was hypersalinity, where we did not have enough fresh water getting into places like Florida Bay. But fortunately, with the progress that Ron just talked about on SERP and removing barriers and getting more fresh water flowing southbound and eventually into the bay or east towards Biscayne Bay, salinity conditions seem to be in favorable shape We still need to watch them. This issue seems to be related to weather, which we cannot control, and the dissolved oxygen content in some areas being too high and affecting seagrass. So anyways, I've asked Lawrence to speak a little bit about this in the technical reports because I think it's very important that we keep track of any impact that we're seeing in the areas where we also are trying to move as much water as possible to safeguard the ecology. And then lastly, I wanted to thank Colonel Polk for his service, as everybody else. What a professional partner he has been in helping us expedite projects and get things done. And so really appreciate your commitment and dedication to everything and wish you the best of luck. Look forward to hearing what the next step is. And then obviously to Rosie Bird, who has been incredibly helpful keeping our meetings professionally run, well planned, regardless of how long they run, regardless of how complicated they are. But thank you, Rosie. I wish you the best of luck with your next opportunity. And I'm so glad to hear that it's going to be fairly close, certainly down the road. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Steinle. Do you want to, does Mr. Elsner want to say something now?
Prepared to answer Cheryl's question. I can't. Okay.
Please do. I'll save my comments for after some wisdom.
All right, good question, Ms. Meads, and we do capture tourism in our water supply plans, but it's not directly. Basically, through our population, we use permanent population produced by the Bureau of Economic and Business Research. However, when we're looking at historic water use, we look at the water use by a utility. So that includes permanent residents, non-permanent, tourism, hotels, commercials, restaurants, so that those areas that have a larger non-permanent tourist population have higher per capita. So as we're projecting forward, we're capturing that water use by those individuals. However, in places like Reedy Creek, Marco Island, they have a very large seasonal population in tourism, and we work with those utilities in developing a methodology that works for them, in that specific situation, because that water use is important to capture, and we want to make sure we do it correctly going forward.
That's great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Makes sense.
Thanks, Mr. Elsner. My comments, hopefully I don't go on too long. I want to pick up a little bit where Mr. Butler left off and with Mr. Collins. We're certainly all going to miss Joe, and I really wish he could have been here this afternoon for this discussion because it's so important, and he's been such an incredible advocate for this going back, I think, the last decade or so. I just want to say thank you. Something that Ben picked up on, to his family, because all of our families, we all come up here and serve, we have fun doing it, but it does take us away from our families to do it. So I want to thank his family for the time that they allowed him to be up here to serve with us. As Cheryl said, no one really likes change, but that's what growth is, I guess. And Lieutenant Colonel Polk, we're going to miss you a lot. I can't imagine anyone better for this job. I think you would have done this even if you weren't doing this, because as Cheryl said, everywhere you look, you're there. And you're always there in your BDUs. We're there in short sleeve shirts and shorts, and you're there in your full long sleeve shirts and your long sleeve pants and your boots, and it's usually 98 degrees, and you've always got a smile on your face, so God bless you, and we look forward to working with you in the future too, I hope. And Rosie, I want to say thanks to you, of course. You're just an incredible crutch to all of us up here, and an incredible help to all of us as we move through it. I don't know if most people understand what a hard job being a clerk is, but it's the most technical thing I've ever seen. I saw it when I was in the city of Sanibel a little bit. It's a tough job. I mean, there are a lot of I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed, and you get in trouble if you don't do it. So, Molly, not to scare you, but keep us out of trouble. And Rosie will really miss you. I'd like to thank the governor very much for reappointing Vice Chair Wagner, Mr. Steinle, and myself. We look forward to hopefully another 4 years. And to pick up a little bit on what Ben was saying about Four Corners and that Aljo project, I want to thank Henry Dean, who helped put it together, and the Beal family, whose property it is. And as you mentioned, I think it was just last May that we were working on this, and I think at the same time we were working on the Okeechobee project. So it's the same kind of thing where these little incremental projects, they're not huge, they're not big CERT projects, but they do make a difference. And I'm really happy to hear that EIP, the Environmental Investment Partner, is going to be working with the property owners in the area and is going to have some sort of seminar or listening session on August 29th. I think that's really important. I think we need to make sure that everyone does have a chance to voice their opinion, and that the projects are going to come out much better as a result of that, in having that discussion. Not to sound like a broken record, but I guess I do this about once every year or so maybe it's not that broken. The LACO regulation schedule just cracks me up a little bit. I looked at it, it's at 15.35 feet this morning, and we're in the low subband. And I don't know in whose definition 15.35 is low, but I hope as we look at LOSUM, we adjust that a little bit. And I think I say that every year about now. On the consent agenda, and which we'll be moving to in just a second, item number 20, we're going to recommend reconfirmation of Mr. Bartlett to be the executive director. I just want to say that I obviously fully support that. Over the last 4.5 years, Mr. Bartlett has been a phenomenally good executive director, and I'm really excited to support consent agenda item 20, and also to get him under contract. So now we'll move to consent agenda items. Is there any board member who wants to move any item to consent agenda for discussion? Hearing none, is there any public comment on a consent?
We have none, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Can I have a motion and a second to approve consent?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, and I believe you're abstaining from 26? I have a motion.
Yes.
25, I'm sorry,
25, I
25. Just want to make that clear for the record. Any further discussion on that? Great. Hearing none, we'll call that question. Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Colonel Roman?
Yes.
Ms. Meeks?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Steinle?
Yes.
I'll vote yes, and that passes unanimously with Mr. Bergeron abstaining on that one item. All right. We'll now move to discussion agenda, which is item 27, which is the Lake Okeechobee Component A Storage Reservoir, LOCAR. Ms. Leeds.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning. Let me get all set here. Okay. So we referenced the governor's executive order a little earlier this morning, Achieving More Now for Florida's Environment. So in that, it makes a statement that says to make every effort to advance Everglades restoration projects. It also says to include all storage components in the Lake O watershed project, or the Lake Okeechobee watershed area. So in response to that executive order, district staff has initiated a planning effort, which we call the Lake Okeechobee Component A Storage Reservoir, or LOCAR for short. And it's termed a Section 203 study. So what this is, in the federal planning process, there's a provision in WRDA, it's called Section 203, and that allows for a non-federal sponsor like the Water Management District to take the lead on a planning effort. There's also a provision in WRDA that allows us to, in essence, contract to the Corps to work on our behalf. So with this planning effort, to be able to submit it to the ASA's office or the Assistant Secretary of the Army's office, there's a requirement that it must be both technically and policy compliant with the federal planning process. So that provision in WRDA that allows us to contract with the Corps to act on our behalf helps to ensure that the document would be both technically and policy compliant. And an example of that is we are having the Corps do the environmental impact statement on our feasibility study because the federal government is the one who has to lead the NEPA effort. So that's the reason why you'll see us also refer to this as the 203 study. This is something very similar that we did for the EAA reservoir when we did the SEP Packer as a reference. We're not starting from scratch. Right now, the area that we're looking at was under consideration in the Lake Okeechobee Watershed Restoration Project. I want to assure you that that SERP effort is still moving forward, but what we're talking about for LOCAR is a separate effort right now and is not associated with the LOPE project. So I want to make that distinction because we have been getting questions, is this a part of LOPE? And right now it is not. Once we are complete, we will be the ones to transmit the document to the Assistant Secretary of the Army's Office for Civil Works. They will review it, and then they are the ones who will then submit it to Congress to get picked up in a WRDA bill. So, where are we talking about? The study area is very familiar. This is the same study area that we have in the Lake-O Watershed Project. The areas that we're looking at this feasibility study are Lake Okeechobee, the basins that are north of the lake, Fishing Creek, Indian Prairie, those areas. We're also looking at the downstream effects to both the St. Lucie and the Caloosahatchee estuary. So this is the same map that you've also probably seen under LOPE, and so this is the same study area that we're now using in this feasibility study. So what is LOCAR? So when we talk about Component A is the storage feature north of the lake that was defined in the Yellow Book for SERP. It was defined as 200,000 acre-feet worth of storage, and so that's what we're talking about. In essence, it's designed to keep more water in the system for environmental purposes and also for water supply uses and to ensure water supply reliability, right? So having additional storage in the system will allow us to store those excess water during the wet periods. The lake is the primary beneficiary of this project, so we're looking to reduce some of those really high lake levels, and at the same time also reduce, when the lake gets very low, have the ability to put water back in the lake to reduce the lake from going into water supply cutbacks. We've also seen, we're looking to reduce some of the discharges that we see that go into the downstream estuaries. So what the staff has been working on is we looked at several different configurations in one particular area to determine which was going to be the most cost-effective, operationally effective, and meet the goals of our projects. So you'll see that there's 3 separate alternatives listed here. We have alternative 1, we have alternative 2, which is basically like a 2-storage reservoir system, and then we have alternative 3, which is down here, which is kind of an elongated one. So based on engineering and what gives us the best operational flexibility, right now the staff is proposing alternative 1 as a proposed plan that we move forward with. And so this is what I'm going to present to you today, that staff is bringing to you what our proposed plan is for a discussion. So I'm going to take a little bit of time on this slide because I want to explain to you the location and the intent of what this project is. So just to reorient everyone, down here in the right-hand corner, we have Lake Okeechobee. This here is the Kissimmee River, the C-38. You have Lake Istapoga up here in your upper left corner. And then this is another very important canal, is the C-41A, right? So the C-41A connects Lake Istapoga to the Kissimmee River. And then another structure I want to point out, which is important to us, is this structure here, which is the S-65E. And the reason I say that is anywhere downstream of the S-65E from here into the lake is considered Lake Okeechobee water because there's nothing to there's no other structure between the S65E and the lake. So this is Lake Okeechobee water. And the reason why that is important is, as I said earlier, this project is to benefit the lake. So to be able to do that, we need to be able to pull water off the lake and put it into this reservoir. So we are going to propose to put a pump station in this area that will do exactly that. It will pull water from the lake up past this pump station, up the C41A to the reservoir inflow pump station, and then pump it into the reservoir. Now again, this is going to store approximately 200,000 acre feet. The size of this is about 12,000 acres and divided into 2 cells. And the reason we divide it into 2 cells is also for safety factors, right? Because if the fetch between the entire reservoir is too long, you get too much wind wave run up. So having it divided into 2 cells addresses that issue. It also gives us a little more operational flexibility. We also have the ability with this reservoir to capture basin water. So as water is leaving Lake Istapoga or in the basin, it'll come down the C41A, and we can lift it in this pump station into the reservoir. And then we also have the ability to flow water out of the reservoir back into the basin. So we have a little connection canal here that gets us past just to the west of the S83. And what that allows us to do is it gives us the operational flexibility to put water back into the C41A, into the C41, and also down into C39A. And we do that so we can maintain optimal canal stages within this basin. So we have water that we can capture off of the lake, and then we have water that we can capture within the basin. And we can return it to the lake and return it to the basin, and that also provides greater reliability to all the water users in the basin. This is just a closer look at what the reservoir footprint is going to look like. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the design features, because this is a large reservoir, has 18 miles of embankment, and because the Water Management District has the lead, we are still designing this to all the Corps' dam safety design requirements. That means that it has all the robustness, the redundancy, the resiliency that we typically design into all of our reservoirs. C43 is a great example, right? We have the lead on that. We incorporate all of the same design standards. And we also, with this reservoir, have to maintain flood protection and water supply. So you hear the term savings clause. We're beholden to the same thing because we're still in the federal planning process. We have also designed this to capture major storm events, like all of our reservoirs. And so the engineers call it a probable maximum precipitation event. What that means is it can capture 54 inches. So if it's raining and it's a 54-inch rain event, this reservoir is designed to capture that as well. It's also designed to withstand hurricane force winds and the wave and the wind run-up that will be associated with a hurricane as well. Like all of our CERT projects, we also have recreational opportunities. So with this, we are looking at possible recreation features that could include some of the same things that we see at our other reservoirs, like boat ramps, nature areas, and other passive recreational uses. We know that's very important to the public, and so as we're designing this, those features also get designed in as well. So I kind of just want to talk a little bit about what it means to capture those larger storm events, right? So in this area, we've had some fairly major hurricanes that have come through in the past several years. So for reference, we're talking about how the reservoir is designed for a 54-inch rain event. So on the left side of your screen, this was the rain event associated with Hurricane Irma, which is a Category 2 storm. So here's Lake Okeechobee, and our low-car project is located probably right up around in this location here. So as a reference, in the middle Kissimmee, upper Kissimmee, they had about 12 and a half inches worth of rain in this area. More recently, with Hurricane Ian, which was a Category 3 storm from last year, the area also saw about a 12-inch rain event for the total storm. So with this reservoir being designed for 54 inches, we would have been able to capture that rain that would have fallen in the area on top of that reservoir. So a little bit more about how we handle some of the extreme events. The embankment is going to be about 33 feet as of right now. The average water depth within the reservoir will be about 19 feet. And so because of that, all of our reservoirs are designed to withstand, that type of water. And so what we do for that is we have something called soil cement. So the entire interior surface is soil cement. It also allows to have what they call freeboard to allow for that maximum rain event. And then if there are like wind and waves, that freeboard will make it so the water will not like slosh out of the reservoir, right? So it also includes a wave wall to help contain the water inside that reservoir until the event has passed. And then we have the ability to get water out of that reservoir at about 3,000 CFS. So the inflow pump stations are 1,500, and we can get about 3,000 CFS water out of that reservoir. To do that, we're also doing an analysis within the C41A canal that it's located on to improve that conveyance within that canal. So it needs to be deepened and widened a little bit within our right-of-way to allow for that additional water to get out. So that is also included in our design effort. One last thing about the design, it will have, with the embankment, we also have a robust seepage management system, and there are several aspects that we include in our reservoirs design to help address some of that seepage management concerns. In this one, from here on the right side, this is what the typical embankment would look like. The blue here on the right is the reservoir water. This feature right here is called a cutoff wall. So this one will also contain a cutoff wall. In addition, the entire reservoir will be circulated by a perimeter canal, and this is to capture seepage. And then that seepage will be returned to the reservoir. So it has the cutoff wall, it will have a seepage perimeter canal, and then also internal to the embankment, it will also have a seepage management system to be able to capture that. So with all of our projects, we want to be able to highlight the benefits of it. So one of the ways that we do that is by regional modeling. You're all familiar with when we talk about our regional modeling. So this one is no different. And even though the Water Management District has the lead on this, we are using all the approved regional models that we typically do in SERP. So we're using like the RSM model. And in addition to that, to highlight the benefits, we also use all the standard performance metrics. We call them the Recover performance metrics. So those science performance metrics that we always look at for SERP projects are also utilized here. And so what we wanted to do is we really wanted to highlight the benefits of having additional storage in the system and what that does to benefits for the lake and how we see some of those reduced discharges to the estuaries. So to do that, we look at several different scenarios. We look at how things look today. We call that the existing condition. We look out into the future and we say, okay, we've got some authorized projects out there like the EAA and C43. We're going to assume those are built and in the ground. What do things look like with that? And then we add a scenario on that says, here's our project, here's our additional 200,000 acre feet of above ground storage. What do things look like now? So we're going to go over just a few items on that. And again, it's really to highlight the benefits that we're seeing as a result of having additional storage within the system north of the lake. So first, this is just a good graphic that shows, courtesy of Zach Welch, that shows, what are ideal marsh conditions on the lake. So what he did was he wanted to be able to communicate to folks that For ideal marsh conditions, they really want to keep the lake in this, what they call the optimal ecological stage envelope, right? So that's roughly between 11.5 and 15.5 feet. And it changes due to seasons, but that's kind of roughly what they've identified the lake is looking for. When the lake gets too high, it reduces the marsh size, drowns out all the submerged aquatic vegetation. And then when the lake is too low, it dries out the wetlands. So with keeping that in mind, we wanted to show you one way in which you kind of can look at how your project is doing with respect to keeping the stage in the lake in the ecological envelope. So this graph on the left in this gray area shows that ecological stage envelope. And as you have a project that moves either stages higher, so you get further away from this ecological envelope, your penalty scores get higher. As the project, if it's moving it lower, your penalty scores get higher. So the further away you get from that ecological stage envelope, the more penalty points you're paying. So on the right, what we're depicting is here's our existing condition, right? So this is what it's like today. If we look to the future with authorized projects, we see there are some improvements as a result of having the EAA in place, C43 and others. The one to the right is with our project in place. So we see even a further reduction of those high lake stages, and we see that the low lake stages have improved as well. So you can see that progression, especially on the high side. So I'll say that this project does a really good job of knocking down the high lake levels. And I've got a couple of graphs that are going to show that as we're coming up. Okay. So again, this is what we call a stage duration curve. It includes the entire period of record that was looked at, so I think it's 52, 54 years. And it shows, lake stages on the left, and then the percentage of time that those lake stages are at, any one of those levels. So this is the existing condition. So this is what we see today. So an example is today, the lake will be at 16.5 feet for about 10% of the time for the period of record. We also see that at 13.5 feet, right, it stays there at 60% of the time. So keeping that in mind, when we go to add the future with the current authorized projects like EAA and C43, we can see on this red line, it starts to bring the stages down. One thing we don't see is at the very high levels, not too much is done for extreme high lake levels. However, we go from 15.5 feet, about 26% of the time, right here, down to 15% of the time at 15.5 feet. So we do see some reduction here. And you can see that on the low level, it's, things are a little bit, they're moderated. We have lower lake stages overall. So now we want to look at what do we see when we add the storage feature north of the lake. And this blue box in the middle is highlighting the ecological stage envelope. So our project is this dark blue, is this medium blue, royal blue line. So you've got the existing condition, you have what's the future with the authorized projects, and then what happens when you put this low-car project on top of it, this 200,000 acre feet. And what we see is that, about 10% of the time in the existing condition, we're up at 16.5 feet. With northern storage in place, that drops to 2% of the time. And we can see here in these extreme high lake levels, we're improving those conditions. So it's really knocking down a lot of those high lake levels, and it's starting to flatten out the curve. In addition, you can see that at lower lake levels, it starts to return water back to the lake when the lake is getting too low. So again, we start to really see this flattening out of this stage duration curve. So The benefit here is really knocking down these high lake levels, you know. And I would like to say that this is just with 200,000 acre feet north of the lake. This does not include the ASRs. If you were to include that below ground storage, which has a lot more carryover, you would see this curve flatten out even more. And we'd probably see improvements to lower lake levels improve as well, because the ASR gives us that carryover time that we can hold water below ground and then return it. The benefit with above ground storage is you really see these reductions in these high lake stages. Okay, so what are we seeing in the estuaries? So we know the lake is the primary beneficiary, but what we wanted to do with the estuaries is to highlight the reductions as a result of those lake-triggered events. So we really wanted to focus in on those events that are triggered by lake releases. So with that, we mean, you know, the discharges that are coming through the S80 structure. So some of the ones we look at are stress flows, which are high flows coming out at 1,400 to 1,700 CFS. So we see a reduction in those stress flows to the St. Lucie, 33%. So in the existing condition, there's about 30 of those events, and we see those events now drop down to 20. And then we have like those damaging flows, those really high flows that are coming out, and we see about a 30% decrease in those damaging flows from the existing condition to having this project in place. So the existing condition is about 41 events, and we're seeing about 29 with this project in place. We see similar in the Caloosahatchee side. So again, we really wanted to show like those events that were being triggered by lake releases. So that's what these are focused on. And again, we looked at those stress flows and those damaging flows, and we see those reductions in those releases as well. So a 45% decrease in lake-triggered stressful flows, 77 events that are happening today. But then with this project and authorized projects in place, we see that dropping down to 42 events. And the same thing with those damaging flows. We see a 36% decrease in lake-triggered events. Again, 86 events down to 55. So we're seeing a good result of having storage north of the lake and giving us that greater operational flexibility to pull that water in and store it. Last thing we'll talk about, water supply cutbacks. So what we're looking at with this is one of our typical performance measure graphics. Blue is our existing condition. Red would be the future without our project. And green is if we have that storage reservoir in place. The years that are representative are the ones with the highest water supply cutbacks, drought years. And so we do see that what we would expect is a downward trend and less water supply cutbacks. And what that means is that we have more water supply reliability to all water users as a result of this. So where are we at, where are we going, and what are our next steps? So I probably failed to mention that we are on an expedited planning schedule. And what I mean by that is we started back in January, February by initiating this planning effort. And we are right now here in August. We have a proposed plan that we're bringing to the board. We plan to have a draft report that will be out for public and agency review in October. And this will be a draft feasibility study and environmental impact statement. And we are on schedule to have a final report in December of this year that we will then submit to the ASA's office in January. So in SERP terms, that's roughly 3 years worth of planning smushed into 1 year. But right now we're on target to meet those timelines. We also have a website, LOCAR website right now. So if people have questions, they want to find out information, all of our public meetings, all of our reports, everything right now is posted on this website, sfwmd.gov/LOCAR, and that's being kept up to date. And so with that, we'll take any questions.
No, thanks very much, Ms. Leach. I have a bunch, so I'll just jump in and then get to everyone else. You talked about it not being part of LOPE right now. Will it become part of LOPE, or does it stay separate, or how does that work?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So once we submit it to the ASA's office, right, so we're targeting a WRDA 2024. Upon authorization, it will get brought up under the WRP umbrella.
Okay.
Whether it gets a part of LOPE or it stays as a standalone project, it can stay as a standalone project. But it will work in conjunction with all of the LOPE features.
So it doesn't really matter?
No.
Okay. Who owns the land? Or who will own the land, I guess is the other way to put it.
So right now, we're working with a single landowner. We do not own the land as of yet.
Would we purchase it, or would we lease it, or is that under negotiation?
It's under negotiation, but typically when we have CERT projects, we need to have the land in fee.
Okay. You showed us 3 different scenarios.
Yeah.
The 1, 2, and 3. So I'm just wondering, were costs looked at when you looked at the alternatives, or was it just engineering?
We had rough order of magnitude costs. So just, we had enough engineering to be able to say, okay, the 3 different alternatives, they roughly provide the same benefits, but due to, like, some of them, like the one that was 2, right, and then there was another longer one, some of it had to do with some land availability, but also just the cost of having some of those configurations. Alternative 1 was what they call in the federal process the best pie plan and the most cost-effective.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure.
Yeah, and for us too, we also look at maintenance costs, so.
Of course. And then my last question, do you think would you have been able to take water from Lake Istokova, you know what I mean? And the basin during Ian is what, if you say you can take 54 inches of rainfall and they had, I don't know, what'd you say, 12 and a half or maybe a little bit more in Ian, could you have taken water from up north and from the basin to hold it? If that had been online in Ian?
Right, so I think it would depend on the situation, right? But typically.
I'm sorry, that's probably more of a John question.
Yeah, but typically, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, theoretically, yes. I mean, obviously, it depends on the antecedent conditions, the time of year, and what the pool is in the reservoir at the time of the storm. So as Jennifer described, it's a 19-foot pool. If it was less than that, then yes, we would have been taking water.
Gotcha. Thanks. Anyone else have questions? I'm sure. Mr. Bergeron?
I have a question. The 3 different sites, is it owned by 3 different property owners or the same property owner?
It's all the same landowner.
Same landowner.
Mm-hmm.
So,
sorry.
truthfully, obviously, these reservoirs is going to be extremely important for the environment and minimizing quantity of water greater than natural going into the Gulf and the Atlantic, and which is very damaging to the environment. And obviously, it's a waste of the water, so it increases our water supply. So I think it's storage north of the lake is extremely important.
Thanks. Ms. Meads?
Wow, it's incredible work, right? Congratulations. It's a lot of hard work you've done. So after we get approval, let's just say we have approval, we have the money, how long will it take to construct, just a ballpark figure?
So Drew has instructed us, or requested of us, that once it's authorized, to start looking at planning and going into the design phase right away. So I'll throw on my engineering hat and say typically it takes roughly, 2-3 years to design, and then 5 to 8 to construct? I'm getting the thumbs up, so about that.
And we're building this one?
I don't want to get too ahead on the funding, but right now we're positioning it for pursuit of appropriations. Yep.
For us, not the Corps?
Correct. I mean,
I have
one of the
other
things that we
question.
need to, cost share, with the Corps building the EAA reservoir, that's a lot of money on their side of the cost share ledger. So we're
Understood.
trying to position things for us to put things on our side of the cost share ledger, and this is a good example of that.
Okay. Mr. Bergeron, then Mr. Butler.
The 54 inches of rain, is that 54 inches across a year or one event?
I believe that's one event.
Yeah, Mr. Bergeron, it is a single event. So what we do when we design these facilities, you identify what Jennifer alluded to, the probable maximum precipitation that you can expect in that region, in that area, in that geographic location. In this particular case, it's 54 inches. So it is during a course of one single event.
Have we ever had an event of 54
So you saw the
inches?
other graphics that Jennifer displayed on the Ian totals of 12 and 17 inches, depending on where you looked at. Those are spatially averaged over that entire area that is in that basin that was on that graphic. Anybody who lives in South Florida for long enough, you know you can be enjoying a sunny day in your backyard and 3 blocks over, it's pouring down rain. So that's why you go with the higher number, the 54, because you can have those very intense downpours just isolated and stuck over one location. We saw a similar thing happen here in Palm Beach County out to the west of us in the acreage back in 2011, where a system just parked over that area for 24 hours and dumped a lot of rain. Spatially averaged out, it didn't seem like a lot of rain, but for that one location, it was a lot of water in a very short period of time. So that's how we design these facilities, to be able to accommodate those types of phenomenons.
Yeah, sort of like the Fort Lauderdale Airport.
Exactly, another very
Yeah.
good example.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Butler.
We won't bring this back for board comment after public comment. Just want to confirm.
Yes, because somebody forgot public comment again. Sorry. I'm not blaming you.
Well, I'm not just rushing you. I just want to be sure. I've got some comments, not necessarily questions, but.
Yeah, Molly, actually,
Okay.
do we have public comment on this?
We do, Mr. Chairman. We will start
Ben, with
with,
your indulgence, we'll do that and I'll come back.
we'll start with Newton Cook, followed by Mark Perry and Caitlin Newcamp.
Thank you, Newton Cook, United Waterfowlers of Florida. Boy, how can I be happier? You know, we're working north of the lake. Some people have been screaming about we can't do a darn thing to solve the problem till we stop the water going into the lake too fast. And what does this do? Slows the flow into the lake. But I want to remind you, I was at a PRR meeting on the EA1, EA2 reservoir, just like this one, 2003. Of course, one didn't get built, and two is going to be completed in 2032, 30 years. We just heard 10 years projected for this one. I won't be here 10 years from now, but I can tell you this, hopefully we'll have this one done in 10 years and not 30. It would really, because this is the most important project that we've had come here in front of this board since the Kissimmee restoration. Once we start getting control of the water going into the lake, then we got control of the whole system. And the second thing is once you get the bottom open and get rid of that stop at the Kamehameha Trail because of the bird, then you got the complete system running naturally. Well, wouldn't that be a change? Now, reservoirs are wonderful, but they're useless during a rain event unless they are empty or almost empty. So the recreation on this reservoir is going to be incredible. We're going to have a lot of fishing. I'd probably be a little deep for a lot of duck hunting, but there'll be great fishing, alligators, boating. So in the plans, there's supposed to be a percentage of the cost of this project in boat ramps and parking places and public access. So whoever starts the budgeting, we want to hear a conversation about that at the recreation meeting as soon as we know what's going on. And incidentally, the next rec meeting is September the 25th, I think it is. Finally, something north of the lake. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Next, we'll hear from Mark Perry, followed by Caitlin Newcamp.
Yes, Mark Perry, Florida Oceanographic. You know, it's, those of us been around since 2000 when we saw the Yellow Book and understand component A was that 200,000 acre feet North Lake. It pleases us to see, yeah, finally we're getting around to being able to achieve that. Any storage treatment systems that we can put north of the lake, these projects or even on sites up into that watershed are going to be beneficial to, as Newton Cook and others pointed out, getting water before it gets into the lake and storing it and treating it. The concern kind of going forward is making sure the water control plan obviously gets developed that will operate the reservoir correctly, and then also the concern about, you know, putting the water back into the lake system, going through some sort of STA. Components that have been developed, like the C44 reservoir project or the EA storage reservoir project, have STAs associated with them, so that, as you know, as the water comes out of the reservoir going back into the system, can go through an STA. So just kind of bring that up, but otherwise very supportive of, again, the concept of getting all that storage we can north of the lake and attenuating those flows that come into Lake Okeechobee.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Caitlin Newcamp?
Hello again. Good afternoon, governing board members. I guess good morning still. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. Caitlin Newcamp with Audubon, Florida. Thank you, Jennifer, for the informative presentation on LOCAR. We have been a long time advocate for storage solutions north of the lake, so we're pleased to see this project progressing. And it is clear that the district and the Corps have been working expeditiously, given the many challenges during design. We are grateful for district staff's persistence in working through these issues to ensure LOCAR's inclusion into WRDA 2024. And with more control over water flowing into Lake Okeechobee, we will see benefits not just for the lake, but downstream into Everglades National Park, into Florida Bay, and to the estuaries to the east and west that have been plagued by excessive releases and algal blooms. This reservoir will be the largest and most impactful component in the area, and so we are in support of it moving forward, and it will help us to reach our collective storage goals north of the lake. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Newcamp. Moving on to our virtual participants, we have one raised hand. Nyla Pipes, please unmute.
Sound check.
We hear you.
Fantastic. Nyla Pipes, One Florida Foundation. Let me go ahead and add our voice to the many that have come before in support of this incredibly important project. You know, several of you were not necessarily as involved 10 years ago when I got involved in this. And I will tell you, we took a lot of heat back in the day for saying things along the lines of, we can fix the drain all we want, but if we don't fix the faucet, we're in trouble. This project absolutely gets at some of that faucet. Attenuating those flows north of the lake not only helps with our water supply, but it also gives us an opportunity for more cleansing. You slow it down, you can get cleaner water going into that lake. And I hear, you know, the concerns about an STA, but I got to tell you, we've already got Paradise Run. We've got other projects that will dovetail with this. So I think that we have to look at this and not ever forget that it does work in conjunction with a whole lot of other things we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pipes. Mr. Chairman, we have no additional raised hands for this item.
Thanks, Molly, and thank you all for your comments. Mr. Butler.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Boy, there is a lot going on north of the lake right now. And that's been one of the challenges as we've gone through this, is sometimes there's confusion in acronyms. And here we are with LOCAR. We've been working on Lower Kissimmee Basin STA. We've got LORP that'll have PDT meetings this fall, working on Paradise Run, looking at Kissimmee River Center. And there's already, the district's got some other projects teed up that they'll be talking about going forward between now and Christmas. And so there is a lot going on LOCAR. To begin with, I want to give some praise to district staff that has kind of an unofficial team that I've been working with on rolling this thing out. Ms. Leeds, of course, everybody, Ms. Reynolds, everybody in that shop behind the scenes working on this report on this 203. But Liz Kaneha, your work in the basin, Libby, your work in the community and in the area, and Armando, his work with an outreach has helped kind of roll this thing out. The working with individual stakeholders. I will say one of the biggest critics of LOCAR is probably my family. I will say, so LOCAR as designed now is about half a mile from our place. I lay my head every night about 2.5 miles from LOCAR. It's where my family is. The one thing that does, and within my family, it's a family operation. We've kind of got to divide and conquer, delegate duties. I'm the water guy. I'm the one in charge of making sure, taking care of the water issues for the family. So my family doesn't get to hear all these presentations. They're back at the farm working or working on other priorities. And so they don't get to hear these presentations. They don't get to hear Mitnick talk about dam safety. They don't get to hear Ms. Leeds talk about the savings clause. And the savings clause in this case, where of course, again, it can't, we know what the savings clause is, but it can't be stated enough that when it comes to comprehensive Everglades restoration, that was a key to getting the full bipartisan support for SERP. And the savings clause, we hear it from the water supply side, but also in this case, we hear it from the flood protection. The flood protection that was provided by the system in December of 2000 cannot be impacted by comprehensive Everglades restoration, including LOCAR. Stacking that much water on top of ground, yeah, all the locals, and I can, all the locals, there's concern of what seepage will be like. John's assured me, Corps assured me, they're going to get this seepage thing figured out, and we're going to make it work. John, you're not allowed to retire until we get this one done. But the savings clause, the assurances are there that neighboring landowners will not be impacted. Slide 17 says it all for me. I love that risk curve. It's what I did my master's on, was looking at risks and using that type of a risk curve. And to look at the flattening of that curve, the flattening of the Lake Okeechobee levels between 15 and 12 feet, increasing the time in that. That's makes up for what LOSUM has, the one loser in LOSUM is the lake and the health of Lake Okeechobee. This project makes up partly for that. We've got to continue on with these other projects, storage north of the lake, to again keep flattening that curve. We got to work on that curve down at the bottom end. We got to get that risk of falling below 12 feet further to the right there, get it down into the single digits of percentage chances that could happen. And also those percentage chances, let's make them more man-made so that when we do need to get that low. I look forward to seeing this thing come through. 10 years is ambitious. I think it's a achievable goal, and I hope that hope we can keep moving forward. And yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Butler. Colonel Roman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Leeds, for that excellent presentation. I think this is an extremely important project north of the lake, and I also keyed in on slide 17, Mr. Butler. In looking at it, our efforts are moving forward. We're really leaning forward in terms of storage north of the lake. But when I look at slide 17, I see we're advancing the ball. but it's imperative that we find solutions that keep it in the ecological envelope, because that's what we're sacrificing, is the health of the lake, and that's what the stakeholders are so concerned about it every time I go out to Lake Okeechobee, and it's clear what's happening. So after we're done with LOCAR, and we get this across the finish line, or maybe in concert with LOCAR and the other projects, what else do we have going on to advance that movement towards a greater time spent in the ecological envelope?
So I think, like I said, this is not going to inhibit LOPE going forward, right? So we are hugely advocating for ASR. We're not waiting for the Corps. We're keeping to advance that. So I think that's one of our next big, SERP tools in the toolbox, right? That will give us that additional storage. Because with ASR, those are also positioned to pull water in off of the lake. They can. And the advantages with ASR, to Mr. Butler's point on getting after those lower lake levels, is ASR has carryover. And what we mean by that is we can carry that over through a dry season, right? And be able to put that ASR storage back into the lake during dry seasons or during drought. So that's where the ASRs are hugely important.
And after that, what else are we looking at? Partnerships with private landowners? Where are we at in terms of those other pieces that we pull together? Drew?
So the partnerships with private landowners will continue to discuss. And as you heard earlier, there are more projects coming forward as we continue to implement Northern Everglades and estuaries protection in that northern watershed. I would also put on the table to help with moving, taking water off the lake, moving it south, right? So the EAA reservoir, you saw that was in the graph, but what wasn't in the graph was the southern features of the Western Everglades project, which help us move it out of the conservation area so there's more capacity to move it through the conservation areas. And the seepage wall is under construction, so we can move it into the park unencumbered. But when we get to Southern Everglades and some future planning projects down in that southern Miami area, there'll be some more analysis to see if, how we can balance between the park and the eastern part to see if even more can be sent down. Because there's always a notion that the seepage wall can continue south, right, from around the 8.5 square mile area. And the last thing I would mention is the Upper Kissimmee chain of lakes. Last in Florida 2022, there was authorized a risk assessment up there, which could involve storage, right? More storage up in the Upper Kissimmee chain of lakes. That remains to be seen through a planning process. But you could end up, at the end of the day, even adding more storage up in that area as well. So, there's a number of things, I'm sure, as a district and as a Corps and as a stakeholder community in South Florida, we'll never stop thinking about it,
That was very helpful. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Ms. Leeds, thanks very much. That was a great presentation, and good luck with the rest of the 203.
Thank you.
We'll move now to technical reports, and Mr. Mitnick, the water conditions report.
And Mr. Butler, if you need help with your harshest critics, let me know. There we go. All right. So as usual, start off with the rainfall over the last couple months. You can see sitting here in August, just eyeballing it, maybe a little bit less than half of the rainfall that we typically get in the month of August, and we're about halfway through the month, so that sort of lines up. Back in July, you saw there was a slight deficit, but had that excess there in June, May, and April, going back to the 3 preceding months. Looking at overall how water fell or how rain occurred throughout the district during the month of July, you can see predominantly it fell along the lower East Coast and the central portions of the district here, a little bit north of the lake, upper East Coast. What I'll call your attention to over here on the southwest coast, that's where the largest deficit is. If we drill down into that a little bit farther, you can see for the whole southwest coast, it was about 3.8 inches of deficit in rainfall. But if you look more specifically just at the Big Cypress Basin and don't include those other portions of Lee County that are totaled in this number, I alluded to earlier how those numbers get spatially averaged over that entire area. So if you just zoom in and look specifically at Big Cypress Basin, it'll be over a 4-inch deficit in rainfall, roughly 4.3 inches deficit so far during the month of July, which would make it the largest deficit that they've had over there since they've been recording rainfall back in 1990. And the reason for that is we have the trade winds that typically come across the district this time of year have been very weak in their nature. So they aren't coming all the way across. They aren't interacting with that sea breeze that comes in from the Gulf of Mexico that generates those rains there along the lower west coast of the state. Instead, because they have been so weak, primarily that rain starts falling over here on the east coast, and that's why there's this sort of shift, and you have predominantly most of the rains over here along the east coast as opposed to the lower west coast that you would typically see this time of year. So looking at the upper portions of the system and how those lakes have fared, you can see they're all, East Lake, West Lake, and Lake Kissimmee are all below their regulation schedules. This is also the time of year where they start to rise up as we get towards the end of the wet season, the peak of hurricane season. This is one thing that we are starting to have a conversation about internally here at the district is what that future may hold, and I'll talk about future weather patterns towards the end of the presentation as usual. But maybe looking out a little bit farther, taking into consideration those forecasts and some operations, because ideally when you exit the wet season here out in November, you want the lakes to be up there at their winter pools because that provides sufficient amount of water to get you through the dry season and maintain healthy restoration flows coming down the Kissimmee River. That's what Headwaters revitalization is all about, is fill up the upper chain by the end of the wet season so you have that water to sustain the river through the dry season. So we're going to be having some conversations about continued operations to ensure that we let those lakes start filling up and get up to their winter pools for the coming dry season. You don't have that issue in Lake Okeechobee as we transition a little bit farther south. So this is the typical projection that we see every month based on LORS 2008, which is the existing regulation schedule for the lake. What we focus in on there is this purple shaded region, and so it's a 50% chance that as we move forward in time that stages will fall within that region. As we look at some of the higher projections up here, you see that some of them do start to get up into that intermediate band. So as of today, we're sitting at about 15.35 this morning, or actually as of midnight last night, which is just barely below that intermediate band. So I won't talk about the low band, Mr. Goss, but the intermediate band. And it's just barely below that level right now. So we'll see what continued lake levels look like with future rains as we move deeper into the dry season. Looking at how water's moved around the district over this course of this wet season, you can see the inflows to Lake Okeechobee have been about 650,000 acre feet so far. Roughly, if I'm doing my math correctly, that's a little bit more than a third of that was last month. So the majority of those rains or those inflows happened to Lake Okeechobee within the last 30 days. Looking over at the west coast, about 550,000 acre feet have been moved to the Caloosahatchee Estuary, with just less than 100,000 of that having originated back here in Lake Okeechobee. On the east coast, there has been some basin runoff moved to the St. Lucie Estuary, about a little over 8,000 acre feet. And you've got just less than 90,000 acre feet that have come out of C23-24 basins to the St. Lucie Estuary, and just less than 60,000 acre feet coming into the Indian River Lagoon up there in Fort Pierce area. Looking at the southern portion of the system, conservation areas have had inflows to the tune of about 725,000 acre feet in total. Again, that comes in not only from the north, but from the east and the west. One thing I'll point out on this graphic is this 21,000 acre feet. Last month, we had a fair amount of conversation about Water Conservation Area 2A and how the district initiated operations to move water from 2A out to tide. So that's what that 21,000 acre feet is. We're moving water from Area 2A out of the conservation area and discharging it to tide through the lower East Coast canals where an opportunity exists and there isn't rainfall along the lower East Coast that gives us that capacity to move that water. A little bit farther down on lower East Coast flows in total, that's just over 1 million acre feet have been moved off the lower East Coast to tide. And Charlie, about 3/4 of that was water that was moved to Biscayne Bay. So 3/4 of that 1 million acre feet is water that has been delivered to Biscayne Bay, with the remaining 250, 300,000 acre feet from other areas along the lower East Coast. Down into the park, you can see there's been just less than about 500,000 acre feet has been moved into the park from not only direct inflows from Conservation Area 3A, down Shark River Slough out of the L29, but also some of that seepage return that you get from the pump stations along the South Dade conveyance system. So overall, the way that has left the conservation areas, you can see Area 1 was above schedule for a fair amount of time. It still is above schedule, but this is the time of year, again, that schedule starts rising up. So the Corps of Engineers has implemented operations to manage levels within the refuge such that it does follow that regulation schedule and continue to rise up. So as of, I think, yesterday, they were moving about 750 cubic feet per second, maybe 700 cubic feet per second out of Area 1 down into Area 2, again, ensuring that it also continues to rise up and gets up to its winter pool here in October, November timeframe. Area 2, I briefly touched on, it's still above schedule. It had been coming down until it got this rainfall event right here, which you can see is that little tick up. Right now, the Corps of Engineers is moving about 1,400 cubic feet per second from Area 2 down into 3, and I already mentioned how we are opportunistically moving water from Area 2 out to the lower East Coast and to tide to try to manage those water levels. The idea being is to get those water levels to continue to track across until it intersects with the regulation schedule as the schedule continues to rise. Area 3, on the other hand, you can see sort of had that rise back here in July, kind of plateaued a little bit, and then a little blip there at the beginning of August, but is sort of holding level for right now. All of the S12s, A, B, C, and D are opened and moving water, so we are, along with the Corps of Engineers, we are implementing maximum releases out of Area 3A down into the park. I believe, if I've done my math correctly this morning, is about 2,500 cubic feet per second is coming out of 3A through the 12s, through the 343 A and B, 344 structures over here on the west side, and 333, 33 north right here going into the L29. All of that totals on the order of 2,500, give or take, cubic feet per second. One thing I will touch on while I'm on this slide is there's been a fair amount of rain down here in the South Dade conveyance system over the past couple days. Earlier this week, water levels increased down here in the southern reaches, and we came very close to having to open up S197 and move that water out into Card Sound. But so far, we've been able to hang in there and maintain it while having to implement those operations. The water levels have started coming down, but I'll touch on what's coming at us a little bit later on in the presentation to see if that trend continues. But it's something we'll keep a close eye on and manage the system appropriately. Looking at the stormwater treatment areas, so far we're in the wet season. That's why you don't see these hash bars down here at the bottom for dry season flows. But so far the stormwater treatment areas have processed and treated just over 500,000 acre feet of water. The majority of that coming from the basin runoff, given that we are in the wet season. So what the future may hold, still the same story. We're looking at an El Nino for the upcoming dry season. So Climate Prediction Center is predicting above average rainfall for Florida as we move all the way through March of next year. So what's happening right now, there is a tropical wave that is just sitting off the coast over towards the Bahamas south of us that is going to pass over top of us this weekend. And that's what all these deep greens and blues are for the next couple of days. If you go to our website, this is the forecast as of yesterday. This morning we have updated projections on our website for anybody who wants to go look at it, and you'll see that along here, along the lower east coast, it gets to a darker shade of green, which means more anticipated rainfall right here along the lower east coast. So we'll keep monitoring that and see how it plays out and make adjustments to the system as necessary. So we're looking at a relatively wet weekend. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll just finish up by saying it's about to get busy. We're getting to the peak of hurricane season. These are all the different potential storms. That tropical wave that I referenced is sitting right in here. That's what moves over to here, which is number one out through the weekend. And then there's 3 other weather systems behind it, the majority of which will probably curve off into the Atlantic. But things are heating up in the tropics, and it's going to get busy. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Hey, what's on your y-axis on the right?
That's just the pressure.
Okay.
Millibars.
Thanks. Does anyone have any questions?
John, are we still releasing water outside the system, and like the C11 was still flowing?
Yes.
I think 100th Avenue East.
Yes, let me jump back. So to the extent that we can, given the downstream conditions allow us, so this is the C11 canal just running right across here. It has pump stations at both ends, east and west. The S13 pump station sits over here, and the S9 pump station sits over here. These flows that you see represented by this arrow are coming from the S9 pump station. To the maximum extent that we can, we try to prioritize the operations of S13 to pull that water back to the east and discharge it to tide, as opposed to pushing it back into the conservation areas and further exacerbating water levels in Conservation Area 3A, because you can see that they are already above schedule.
Yeah, I think that's really important, especially with everything heating up in the Atlantic. And we're above schedule in Area 2 and 3, is to move as much as we can out of the system so we have capacity going forward. I think that's extremely important. The other thing is, as we continue to go forward with being able to keep the S12s open in the future, and the 243A and B, or 343A and B, and 344, and the S12s, you're looking at a couple 100,000 cubic feet per second moving south that doesn't affect the water level in the L29, correct?
Correct.
So that's a huge amount of capacity to Florida Bay and southwest to the 10,000 Islands. Extremely important that we get to that point to where we don't have to shut off that flow. And so we don't have the cumulative backup in the central Everglades and then continuously impacting the environment and lack of water and seagrass dying in Florida Bay. We're at a critical point with modified water delivery and raising the Tamiami Trail. And the reason why I talk about this nearly at every meeting is because that benefits the whole system. It benefits the Caloosahatchee, the St. Lucie. This water moving south is less water moving east and west. And we don't have cumulative backups. So I'm excited about what we're doing with the L28, and maybe Colonel Reynolds can give the board members a little update and how we're progressing to put the additional culverts in the L28 and the culverts under the Tamiami Trail, so we have water flowing across the whole 80-mile face of the Tamiami Trail.
Mr. Bergeron, I think you just gave the update, but that's exactly right. That's what we are working on. So those features are part of the Western Everglades Restoration Plan. That plan is still under development. There's a PDT meeting later this month. The Corps has been directed to be able to deliver that plan to their headquarters this calendar year so that it can be considered in WRDA 24. And ahead of that, and in conjunction with that planning process, the district has been moving forward on design of some of the features to include not just the larger culverts that are along the L28 structure, but also all of the culverts necessary to make sure that as water moves through those L28 culverts and into those natural areas, that the water can be conveyed underneath of US 41 and Loop Road, and so that we don't have any backups of water as it continues to move south naturally. And so we are working on the design of all of those features so that we are well postured to be able to go to construction once that plan has an approved selected plan and draft that is being considered by Congress.
Well, that'll be a great day when that's completed, because now you have water flowing across the whole 80 miles by gravity where it naturally flows. And it'll move more water south, extremely important to that whole general area. So, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bergeron. John, I got a question for you. On the winter pools north of the lake, you say we're pretty low right now. With the anticipated El Nino, are you thinking about keeping those low?
Yeah, I touched on that, I think, last meeting, especially
Yeah.
for East Lake Toho and some of the other lakes that actually, unfortunately, just fall right up here under the R on this graphic. That we'll be looking to, once they get up to their winter pool, as they come up, maybe keep them just a little bit low, 2/10 maybe, as it rises up, to handle any late season storms that may occur like we saw
Yeah.
with Ian.
Okay. Anyone else? Thanks very much, John. Mr. Glenn? It's a cool picture.
I have staff that have the coolest jobs, and they get the best pictures. And this is Dr. Mark Cook, got this on a bird flight, so that's really neat, a lemon shark down in Florida Bay. As always, I'm happy to present to you today the ecological conditions update. We'll start in the Kissimmee. As John has talked about, Lake Kissimmee is a little low. The flow going to the Kissimmee River is low. It takes about 1,400 CFS, so you see we currently have 310 CFS, to get bankful discharge to inundate the floodplain. Last year, after following Ian, we had an unprecedented inundation event, lasted for 167 days, which was fantastic. This year, we're not seeing that. We normally would be a lot wetter in this condition, but when the rain's not there, the floodplain is not going to be inundated. In any restoration project, even when you have water reservations in place, they don't drought-proof a project. So if we're not getting the rain, we're not getting the water, and that water is not going to be out on the floodplain. But having extreme events, having some low years, having some high years has ecological benefit as long as you don't tie those together for a long period of time. So looking at where we are with current discharge, this is 1,400 CFS that's taken as needed to inundate the floodplain. As I said, we're below that. But we are seeing we've had a rebound in dissolved oxygen within the river channel, which is fantastic. We're about 4 milligrams per liter right now, and that is a good condition of no concern. Moving into Lake Okeechobee, we're seeing this kind of decline in inflows into the lake, which is good. We're seeing evapotranspiration for the first time kind of overtaking rainfall, except for this coming weekend, which is good. As we look at where we are in the ecological envelope, we're about 1.8 feet higher than where we would prefer to be. And that results in a condition where the entire marsh, or the majority of the marsh except for these real outlying higher areas, is inundated. It'd be nice to be able to go over here and cut this right here and just bring it down a little bit, but that's not where we are. You heard Newton come up and say that there's a concern for SAV within the lake. That concern is real. We have about 3,000 acres of SAV currently. We're in the process of doing our annual SAV Transect data collection right now, and I'll bring that data back to you, but I can go ahead and tell you that it's not going to be a great year for the increase of SAV. We're simply too deep. We prefer to be about 25,000 acres to 30,000 acres, and we're at 3. So that is a concern, for sure. Where we are seeing a brighter spot is in the cyanobacterial bloom density and intensity across the lake. So here's the month that we've seen, and you've seen this decreasing trend in the coverage of blue-green algae across the lake. And we'll get into some of the whys of why we're seeing that. And these are data that I bring to you. Dissolved inorganic nitrogen is really, we follow that really hard. That is the food source for cyanobacteria. They cannot fix nitrogen from the atmosphere. They have to have it in the water. So you are seeing this use of it, and those are those bloom conditions that we have seen. And as that energy source is decreasing, its ability to bloom decreases as well. So we're also seeing with this large decrease, we're starting to see that decrease in chlorophyll abundance, which is a surrogate for how much blue-green algae is on the lake. These are the other factors I talk about often. There's a line right here that you can't see. Well, this is actually perfectly located. No, it's right down here. It's 25, sorry. We are way above the temperature that cyanobacteria like. Rainfall can come in and physically disrupt it. Wind patterns are going to move it around. But really, what is driving conditions right now with blue-green algae is that decline in inorganic nitrogen, and that's something that we like to see. When we go back and look at our last samples that were taken across the lake, 32 stations, you have chlorophyll concentrations. If they are red, they are above 40 micrograms per liter, which says that is a bloom condition, and they track very well with what we see from the NOAA product. And you see that there's a lot of toxin being produced. If you look over here, 8 milligrams per liter is the EPA standard for recreational use. Most of these values are below that, but there is toxin present. Interesting thing about microcystin, the toxin, it is a very nitrogen-rich compound. So when inorganic nitrogen is being used to fuel a bloom, and it is also producing that toxin, it is additionally using that nitrogen that's available in the system and helping to cause that decline. Now, I'm not saying that production of toxin is a good thing, but it is helping to lower the amount of inorganic nitrogen that is in the system and available for continued blooms. So that's something that we're seeing right now. We're also starting to see, if you remember last month, it was almost 100% dominated by Microcystis. Now we're starting to see other species, like Plankton limnia, species that can fix nitrogen. We start to see a change in the community, because when the nitrogen source is being used, the other ones that can fix nitrogen are going to start to increase. But on a general trend, this is about the time of the year, every year we start to see bloom potential wane. So unless we get a large system that brings a lot more nutrient into the system, we anticipate we've hit that kind of peak of bloom, and we're going to start waning down through the rest of the summer or the fall. Moving into the estuaries, St. Lucie Estuary, this graph is really important in showing lake releases and where the water is coming from. Dark blue is when there is a lake release. We haven't had lake releases to the St. Lucie since the end of April. We do get a lot of basin inflow that sets up these salinity gradients, with the green being fresh as we go into the brackish water and then more ocean saline towards the outlet. has been a substantial amount of flow, 1,400 CFS, and that has pushed the salinity condition down into the kind of stressful range for adult oysters currently. And with that, concurrently, we are seeing recruitment hasn't been, it's responding to the salinity condition. This is our submerged aquatic vegetation surveys that we conduct twice a year. We come through and we have over 30 sites in here where we conduct a survey. We take a quadrant, it's basically PVC, quarter meter by a quarter meter. You throw it 8 times, you look at there and you look at the species and you look at the percent composition within that quadrant. How much of that quadrant is actually covered by the submerged aquatic vegetation? And largely within the estuary, although we do see these dots represent a pretty small percent coverage, which the largest being about 5%. So it hasn't been a great year for submerged aquatic vegetation, but it is out there. And then when we look at what are the species, so here's your quadrat, and see here are the little shoots that you have of Halophila and Haliduli. We do see a change of what species are present depending on what salinity conditions are like. So in the wet season, when it tends to be less saline, we have a dominance of these 2 Halophila species, and then when it becomes more saline, Haliduli is the one that has a higher tolerance for, it's more of a seagrass that likes a higher salinity, so it takes over. Moving over to the Caloosahatchee, John has talked about, we've had a recommendation to the Army Corps for 2,000 CFS weekly average discharge at S79, but because the basin is so large that S79 hasn't been able to pass a lot of water to bring Lake Okeechobee down, and discharges are up and actually in the damaging range, but that's simply from basin inflow and about almost 3,000 CFS. And that sets up this salinity gradient of usually in a typical year when we don't have, you would have, this part would be fresh, this part would go into the 5 to 18, and then you get saltier as you make your way to San Carlos Bay. And what we're seeing currently is Cape Coral is in the stressed range, as is Sanibel, but Shell Point, which I'll show you some data in a second, is in the optimal range for adult oysters. And we have a good response for adult oysters in both Cape Coral and in Shell Point. So we're starting to see that peak that we get about September. The 2 estuaries behave differently. I mean, you look at these data and you're like, okay, well, hey, you have a declining condition here, but why doesn't that happen over in the St. Lucie? They're 2 different things. And St. Lucie tends to be bimodal. It has an early spawn, then it kind of falls out, then it has a fall spawn. This side tends to have a unimodal in the middle of the summer type of spawn. Looking at submerged aquatic vegetation within the Caloosahatchee, we separate our area into 4 different zones. So you have this zone, what I talked about, is typically fresh, and then you get increasing salinity conditions as you come down. So there's 4 different areas. If it's a light-colored circle, then it is data that was collected during the dry season. If it's a darker, it's the wet season. So each of these colors would have lighter and darker. And what we're seeing is a pretty good distribution of SAV through the Caloosahatchee. One of the things that we used to worry about before we changed the minimum flow and level was not having tape grass in the upper portion of the Caloosahatchee. We have tape grass in the upper Caloosahatchee, and that's fantastic. And what we're seeing as you come along here is in the upper part, you have a predominance of tape grass, and you start to get some rupia. And then as you come down into the next segment where it starts to get a little saltier, tape grass falls out, rupia becomes even more abundant, and then the next one that likes salt a little more, Haliduli, starts to fill in. You come down to the next section that's getting saltier. Now you have during the wet season when it is not as saline, rupia continuing to dominate, and then when it goes to the dry season and gets saltier, you have a takeover of Haliduli. And then towards the bottom, the one that likes salt the most, which is Thalassia, turtle grass, it starts to increase. And so it's really neat that we have a salinity gradient here, and we have the plants that are appropriately following their salinity gradient downstream. So it's really neat data that shows that how we're operating right now is really beneficial to the Caloosahatchee. Other good news is we don't see any red tide along the west coast of Florida. Every year at this time I come to you and I bring results of the Basin Source Control Program to you. So there is, within the EAA and the C-139 basins, there are performance targets that are to be met. That's a 25% reduction in phosphorus within the EAA. And you'll see that we have hit that every year. This year, past year, it was a 63% reduction in phosphorus, which is fantastic. This is a two-pronged test. If you aren't in compliance one year, you must be in compliance within 3 consecutive years. So we have no issue there. The C-139 basin is done a little differently. Based on rainfall, they create a target limit and a target load. You can come up and exceed the target load, but if you exceed the target limit, so here's the actual value that you have in load. If your load is greater than your limit, you are out of compliance. But you see that hasn't been the case within the past 10 to 12 years. Looking at the Everglades STAs, currently 552,000 acre-feet have been flown in through and out of the STAs, about 2,000 of that from Lake Okeechobee. As John talked about in his bar graph, we really don't worry about Lake O flows until the dry season, where the STAs right now currently are trying to deal with rainfall and runoff from the EAA, and that's their job. We come over here and we look at where we are with inflow concentrations and outflow concentrations, and these data are fantastic. For STA1, it's 20, STA1 West is 19, 13 in STA2, that's QBEL, 13 in STA34, that's QBEL, and we know we have projects online to help STA56. Water levels are a bit high right now, so with the rains, they are high, but we try to bring those down to get them within that normal or optimal range. And something I wanted to show you, this year compared to last year, inflow concentrations last year, inflow concentrations this year, they're lower. Outflow concentrations last year were higher. They're lower this year, especially STA23. Look at this reduction from 33 to 13. I've come to you over the past year or so, and we've talked about restoration strategies and the amount of work that we are doing in the STAs to get them ready for QBEL. We've talked about the refurbishments that we're doing, how we're operating, and then how the FEBs can reduce phosphorus coming into here. Now, I'm not going to say that these reductions are all because of restoration strategy work. It really also depends on how rain falls across the landscape, how much falls at one period of time. But we're seeing some really good responses in here that are quite hopeful for us, and we're seeing some good conditions in various cells of the STAs that make us very happy as we start moving closer and closer to the need to reach QBEL. As you go through STAs, in previous times, there's been a lot more red of what's offline. Currently, only the western flowway, we're doing a lot of work in this cell predominantly right now, is offline, and that's in STA1 East. And then this flowway is offline in STA34, otherwise all flowways are operational. Then Florida Bay, there's been a lot of discharge into Florida Bay that is bringing salinity conditions down, which is really good for, Biscayne Bay, my bad, sorry about that. And as we go into the Everglades and we look at the depth maps, as we are poised and going through this season, there's no more yellow up here. That's great. It is a little ponded here, but what we do see down in Everglades National Park, which is pretty thrilling, is connectivity in Lossman Slough, in Shark River Slough, and in Taylor Slough. So there is a lot of water that is being moved south through the park, and these conditions are really fantastic. Going into Florida Bay, with water surface temperatures in Manatee Bay, which I'm going to cheat for a second. I'm going to come over here. Manatee Bay is over here on this side. It reached temperatures of 101 degrees surface water temperature. That's really high. And what we're seeing in the past week is this is the diurnal cycle. This is daytime temperature, nighttime, daytime, nighttime. But we're seeing this nice trend down, and we're in the 80s, high 80s, which is fantastic. What we worry about with high temperature is hotter water does not hold as much oxygen as colder water does. So as you go through this, you worry about DO crashes. DO crashes can cause fish kills. We haven't seen that across the bay. There's been isolated incidents, but there have not been any mass die-offs from low dissolved oxygen. What it does do is it causes thermal stress on seagrass. So we do see seagrass blade shedding. It's not complete die-off, but they're stressed, so they're losing some of their seed blades so they can be a little bit smaller, to try not to have to use as much energy to survive. So that is occurring. This is the density going across from east to west. It's greater in the west than it is the east. And that's really just following, there's a density difference in seagrass. Seagrasses are more dense in the west than they are. So it's kind of following that gradient of how dense they are as to where that seagrass blade shedding density is just following suit. Where we see ourselves in salinity, the eastern and the central bay, fantastic. And these are the most influenced by water deliveries from the creeks. It's the western bay that is the hardest part for to get water to. That is increasing. But currently, salinity conditions across here are fantastic. And you heard Mr. Steinle ask the question, or in his comment, the last seagrass die-off was due to hypersalinity. You get very, very hypersaline conditions. That stress causes the release of hydrogen sulfide from the benthos. That kills kills the plant. And then as more of the plant grows, dies, decomposes, it keeps that anoxic condition, and it creates this big negative feedback loop that we are not in currently. Florida Bay, this middle picture is, these other pictures are all just this portion. This is where we're seeing. Remember about 4 or 5 months ago, we had that large bloom that was across much of the Western Bay. Going into April, it was really located in the lakes and a little bit within there. We come into June, there's still just in the lakes, a little bit bigger in July, but it's receded back again. So that's a good thing going on there for algal blooms. I meant to talk about back in the lake portion where we were talking about, we have done treatments of blue-green algae out in the system. There was concerns, and you heard Mr. Perry come up and ask, what is the product that you use? How does it impact the ecology of the water body in which you're doing it? We use a product that's called Lake Guard Oxy, and it has hydrogen peroxide as its active ingredient. Hydrogen peroxide, when it goes in, it creates it converts to oxygen and water. It super oxygenates the water, and it's that oxidative process that goes through and kills the blue-green algae. We use it instead of copper sulfate-based algicides that were used in the past. Copper sulfate does not biodegrade. It accumulates in the benthos. It bioaccumulates in organisms, macroinvertebrates, mollusks, fish. So we don't use that. This product turns into oxygen and water very rapidly. It is very selective towards blue-green algae. I'm going to take you back to some general bio. Do y'all remember prokaryotes and eukaryotes? One has true nucleuses, others don't have nucleuses. Well, because Cyanobacteria are prokaryotic. Their photosystem, what they use to photosynthesize, doesn't have a membrane-bound organelle. So it's much more sensitive to this oxidative stress. So it actually, peroxide, attacks them 10 times greater than eukaryotes. So there are other algae in the system that are good. There are other phytoplankton that need to be out there, and because they are eukaryotes, they have membrane-bound organelles, and they are protected more from this product. Eukaryotes also are able to produce an enzyme called peroxidase. Peroxidase attacks peroxide and doesn't let it come in and do that job. So this is a product that focuses mainly on blue-green algae, not the others, not the zooplankton that we're concerned about as the base of the food chain. When this product is released if it can kill and reduce biomass of blue-green algae by 50% within 48 hours. And we've seen it work even faster. That 50% is from the literature. When you go and you look at this, when it goes into a marine environment, there's toxin that is released, and people are worried about, well, when you kill the bacteria, what happens to the toxin? This product, in some studies, also has been shown to attack the toxin itself. And within marine environments, it happens up to 71% of the algae are killed within an hour. So it's just neat that there's pH, temperature, photodegradation, all these different things are going to attack those toxins when they are released that help the toxin. If there is, it's important to remember, I came back to y'all years ago when you first started and said, when blue-green algae is present, there can be no toxin being produced. There can have toxin being produced but not released. And then there's times when there's toxin being produced and released. So when we go and we hit these blooms, it doesn't mean that there always is toxin being produced in each cell that is being attacked by the peroxide. So, it varies on what's going on there. But we see a really good response. For the Timer Powers boat ramp, you heard it was 800 milligrams per liter of microcystin in the water. That's the toxin. 8 is the EPA suggested amount for recreational use. And our product within 24, 48 hours brought it down to 5, below that recreational use. So we're seeing really good results with it. We do have a grant from the Army Corps ERDICT group. That's their research branch. And in the studies that we're going to do in here, we're going to look at efficacy of the product, and we're also going to look for ourselves so we know what are the impacts to those other photosynthetic organisms out there and to the ecology. So the label has to have a label, it has to have done studies, but we want to ensure ourselves that we are using the correct product. And we also agree with Mr. Perry that really getting to the crux of reducing nutrients is the first and foremost thing we need to do. But since this is prevalent, we have a really good treatment protocol put in place, and we're very excited about how efficient it is and how it's been working. With that, I am complete.
Thanks, Lawrence. Are there any questions, comments for Mr. Glenn? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Heater? We'll do the monthly financial report.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
The monthly financial report in your packet is through the month of June. Thus far, we have collected $724.3 million. We've expended $658 million. So from last month, we collected an additional $72 million. Of that, $61 million was from the state for reimbursements from Everglades restoration projects. We spent $93 million in the month of June. So that illustrates that we are on a roll. We're pretty much on trend, with our ad valorem collections, and everything, looks fairly good as far as that standpoint on collecting our recurring revenues.
Have you seen any revisions in the forecast for ad valorem? Don't you get something from the property appraisers right around now, or did you just suggesting what their ad valorem rate was going to be for next year, or not rate, but what their projections are? Don't they update that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't follow. I apologize.
So don't the property appraisers give you a number as to what they think?
For what they're going to charge us?
No, for what our income's going to be, our values.
Oh,
for the
yes,
counties.
yes. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
We received those July 1.
Right, I was wondering, do they update that or not?
No, we didn't. We haven't received an update.
Okay.
Yeah, the July 1 estimates, and I apologize, I wasn't following.
That's all right.
But July 1, we received those taxable values, and we have not received any.
So we're still operating
changes.
on that? And it
Yes.
usually comes out a little bit higher than that, doesn't it?
Sometimes it does, and sometimes it comes back a little less, depending on the value adjustment boards or whatnot.
I'm trying to be optimistic.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I think I remember seeing, and I might be wrong, Candy, it's Jay Steinley, by the way. I think it was about a 12% increase. Obviously, property values continue to go up.
Yes.
So the gross taxable value is about a 12% increase over last year.
Yes.
Thanks, Jay.
Yes.
Anyone have any other questions? Thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Fincher, did you get left off here for a reason, or?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I didn't have a report this
kinda
month,
figured.
so we got off the agenda.
Okay, we saved ink. Thanks. Is there any public comment, Molly?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have one from Mark Perry.
Just a final kind of comment. I appreciate Lawrence kind of going through that, and I also appreciate talking earlier to Drew and Lawrence and staff about the treatment processes and understanding that. So thank you, Lawrence, for really explaining that biologically, those interactions. And we all want to continue to monitor that. I know FSGU and others are doing that. So, what he also brought up was, and what we see is the 5-year average looking back is not only the 598 metric tons of phosphorus coming into Lake Okeechobee watershed, but also the 4,733 metric tons of nitrogen that comes from in the Lake Okeechobee watershed. So that nitrogen, as you saw, is kind of driving some of that value. So the more storage, treatment, things that we can do north of the lake in the watershed to keep that from coming into Lake Okeechobee will address the idea of let's get to the source of the problem of the algae blooms and stop it before it comes into the lake. So the other thing I wanted just to continue to mention, that Northern Everglades and Estuaries Protection Plan was started way back in 2007 and kind of carries forward through the district's responsibility along with FDEP and FDACS. You're the lead agency, in my opinion, because you have the information, you monitor all the data that's there, you're out there doing it. And you have also the watershed protection plans, and you work with those plans to implement and coordinate all the implementation of trying to protect those waters. And when you look back at the implementing legislation in Chapter 373 of Florida statutes, you can see the legislative intent is to really talk about these three watersheds together as a Northern Everglades and Estuaries Protection Program. So I really encourage you to get back another 5-year update or report update on the whole NEAT process, and hold DEP accountable and FDACS accountable too, to help work with you and report back to you about the progress through the BMAPs, which aren't working. They're kicking the can down the road. They've want to recommend extending the St. Lucie BMAP for another 5 years because they can't meet the milestones and the reductions. And that's not the way to address it. We need to really address completing the BMAP so we meet the TMDLs in all of these watersheds and really can see some improvement in water quality. And if we're not meeting it through the BMAPs or BMPs, then what can we do to further that down the road? So I hope the district can take the lead out of the three agencies to come together and come up with a better plan. If the BMAPs aren't working, BMPs aren't working, let's get something that can work within these watersheds. All the great big projects we're doing obviously are going to help, but the big regional projects are expensive, take a long time to do. I think through the operational process within the watersheds, we can do a lot better job, and I appreciate you taking the lead. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. We do have a couple more. Next, we'll hear from Ernie Barnett, followed by Nyla Pipes on Zoom.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board and executive team, Ernie Barnett with the Florida Land Council. I'm actually probably here as Ernie Barnett, alumnus of South Florida Water Management District. I rise to speak to just really compliment y'all. I think there's so much good things going on, and I was kind of moved, so I'll try not to get too emotional, but I sat in these chairs for over 10 years, and then 15 years prior to that, I sat as a senior manager at DEP working on Everglades restoration issues. And I fully understand, probably as well as anybody, the bond between the governing board, your staff, and the 1,000+ behind them that do this incredible work. And this is an amazing place to work. And I had the good fortune of serving as Joe Collins was chairman. And so I just want to thank you sincerely for not just for recognizing his role and that relationship between him and those of us who came before these folks. And as in saying that, fully want to compliment the efforts with LOCAR. We've long advocated as a staffer, as an alumnus, as representing the Land Council, we need to do more storage treatment north of the lake. So that, along with the Lake Okeechobee Watershed Plan, I think is going to move the restoration effort forward and meet the other water-related needs of the region. And so fully support the LOCAR effort, moving the Lake Okeechobee Watershed Plan forward. And I would strongly urge you to move both of those forward in parallel. And if there's stumbling blocks on the federal side, you have the full power to move LOCAR forward as a state-driven project as well. Those two working together with the storage south, east, and west, I think are going to really make a tremendous difference. Also want to mention the support and thank you for recognizing the good work in the BMP program south of Lake Okeechobee. What's often lost is that is a true partnership between the landowners and your staff. And there is so much coordination and effort that goes forward to make sure those load reductions are hit. And that in combination with the excellent work Lawrence and his team and John and his team and Drew and everyone are doing on the STAs and implementing restoration strategies are truly positioning you to ultimately meet this very stringent water quality protection strategy. But when you put those two things together to date, you're getting about a 59% average reduction with the source control program. Added to the STAs, you have literally are knocking on the door of about a 95% pre versus post load reduction and nutrients entering the Everglades. That's a remarkable success story, unmatched anywhere. Thank you for recognizing Joe, and thank all of you for your great work.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett. Next, we'll hear from Nyla Pipes. Ms. Pipes, you may unmute your mic.
Nyla Pipes, One Florida Foundation. There are just a couple of things that I want to mention on the heels of the last couple of presentations. And they're small things, really, in the general scope, but they're about public education and about honesty. One of them is discharges to the C-44 canal. I think it's really important that we talk about the fact that the reason we have had discharges to the C-44 canal so far is because that canal has to be kept at 14 feet. That is, of course, both for navigation and for water supply. The small thing, but I think it's really important. We don't just get to manage for algae, and I think this is the perfect example. I am glad, however, that we are treating for the algae, and I appreciate the updates on how we're treating for that algae. Speaking of algae, the other thing I want to talk about is Lawrence's slide regarding seagrasses. There is at the local level there are at the local level a number of people who keep talking about the increase in seagrass that's occurring, and somehow we've got seagrass rebounding in the St. Lucie River because we have no LACO discharges. Clearly, that is not the case. And one of the things I wanted to bring to your attention is the fact that a lot of locals, and even some of our environmental organizations at the local level, are mistaking algae for seagrass. Lyngbia and other big algae, they think it's seagrass. So for whatever we can do to help educate people a little further on that, I think we need to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Pipes. Mr. Chairman, we have no additional raised hands.
Thank you, Molly, and thank you all for your comments. We'll go now to final board comment, and Ms. Bradley, nothing. Mr. Martinez is left. Colonel Roman?
Yes, just briefly, I want to thank Mr. Bartlett and the entire district team for a great meeting today. And I'd also like to thank Rosie Bird for her service to the district and her many contributions to our success and getting us off the ground. And to Molly, who got through the first governing board meeting. So big shoes to fill, but much appreciated all around. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Meads?
So to the guy who brought us Executive Order 2306, I want to wish him luck on August 23rd, which is the first debate. And I want him to know that I don't expect him to rap or play the saxophone. All I expect is the kind of leadership that brought us Executive Order 2306 and all of the other movement that we've had cleaning up the water here in Florida.
Mr. Bergeron?
Believe it or not, no comments.
Long live the Everglades? Okay.
Long live the Everglades.
Thank you. It's not a meeting without it. Mr. Steinle?
I was going to say that.
I thought so.
No comment.
Thanks, Mr.
no
Steinle. I'm just going to close out by saying thanks to Rosie. You know, it's a hard job. We appreciate all the incredibly good work you did for us over the years, and I understand why you're leaving. Wish you weren't, but to understand it and wish you all the best in the future. And Molly, likewise. And with that, we are adjourned till next month.